Do 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 do. Da 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 da. Can't find my smoker. All right, let's kick this thing off, folks. Bum 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 bum. Can't find my smoker. Rich put the wrong graphic up. Boom! There we go. Yup, Laura yelling at me. And I got 13 days. Uh-oh. Producers in the house. Producers in the house. Gotta watch what I say. The censors are here. Oh, forgot to just kill it softly. Forgot to killing me softly, folks. All right, welcome inside the numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, People's Pundit. How you all doing today? It's a beautiful day here in Eastern North Carolina. Got some updates for you here, some early votes, some early vote updates. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. If you're on Rumble, mosey on over to Locals and subscribe, because, of course, that's the best place to follow us right there. peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. And if you're on YouTube, mosey on over to Rumble and vice versa, right? Because advertisers and algorithms make the world go round, unfortunately. We will start our final national poll this weekend. We will also get you some updates in some states. All right. As I suspected, Florida is simply not competitive. All right. There is a scenario in which Trump wins Florida by a larger margin than he wins Texas. In fact, it would appear that the likely voter modeling, as we get closer, just so you all know this, as we get closer to elections, the likely voter model gets more clear now, and we can project what the electorate is in a more meaningful way, or at least that's what we tried to do. And then we have a higher degree of confidence on what that electorate will look like. In the world, or in the era of early voting, people get tempted to change their projections based on what they see in the early vote. I am not one of those people. The early vote tends to pull to the left of actual margins. In 2020, the margins projected for Democrats and for Biden in the early vote, the initial dumps of early vote, were ridiculously skewed to the left. Yes, Biden won them, but the question is by how much? So, for instance, in Arizona, some polls seriously projected that Biden would win the early vote in Arizona more than 60-40. All right, we're not going to name names. That did not happen. All right. It was a slew of Sunbelt polls. I have to bring this up. I told people at RCP, they do with this information what they want with it. But I will tell you, because I've been waiting for this. Normally I will not embarrass a pollster until their poll comes out. I asked them to clarify for me whether or not they did or did not do something with their sample or include certain responses, and they ignored me. So now I'm going to embarrass them. This is why I say that just because you have experience in one mode of data collection does not mean you are proficient or competent in all modes of data collection as a pollster, especially modes that you and your friends made fun of for years, while myself and others use them to be more accurate than you. All right? This is why when someone changes dramatically their methodology that includes other data collection modes, I always tell you to be skeptical. Marist College, the Marist poll, released a slew of polls in the Sun Belt battleground states. They have Trump largely up. I think Georgia is a tie. The early vote in Georgia, they're projecting to be double digits for Harris. Of course, that's bullshit. If you simply were to assume, let me give you how bad those projections are. Based on what we have for the early vote right now, and it has changed now, I had to do the math again. If you were to assume that every county voted the same that it voted in 2020 in just the early vote, it means Trump is ahead by a little over 4 points right now in the state of Georgia. But of course, we know that the early vote is even Republicans who have in the past voted early. Many places, they tend to be more crossover votes in the early vote than there are in the election day vote. All right, that's number one. It doesn't matter because the bottom line is, here's a perfect example of why I just said the three things that I just said. Mara sent out invitations via peer-to-peer text to take their survey, and you had the option to take it online. Their URL did not block respondents who did not have unique IDs. What am I talking about? When I go, I'm going to show you right now. 1 second. Okay. I was going to show you something else. When we create a survey that is done using peer-to-peer or online marketplaces, you have to put a unique URL in the ID. I mean, a unique URL that returns to you a unique ID that is that matches, okay, what you whatever it may be. In the voter file for us, we have the very first column is API_ID. For you techies out there, you know what I'm talking about. It is a URL parameter. If you do not do this and then implement forward block technology, the survey can be and will be tainted, meaning it will not be able to block, or if you can't block it fully, you can remove them later with this unique ID. It will not be able to stop people from sharing that survey with their friends. And I know for a fact that people were able and did spread around the Marist surveys that were in the Sunbelt polls, all right? And by the way, one of the people who got polled is probably listening right now. If you want to shoot me a text, you can, because you got it, and you first made me aware of it, and then I investigated it further. You simply had to adjust the URL. And my simple question to them was, did you or did you not exclude the responses from those people that did not return a unique ID? Why? Because if I had Robert Cahaley from Trafalgar on here right now, he would tell you the same thing. Why? Because Robert and I have been doing these modes of collection for years. They have not. Sometimes you could block it by IP. Sometimes you could block it by cookie. Because if you're not sending out an invitation to somebody, right, then if they forward it to their friends, you can block it. If they forward it to somebody who's in their office building with them, for instance, right, you could block it, right? So if they're forwarding it to somebody in their house, right, hey, honey, I got this poll, take it too. Let's pump up Trump or let's pump up Harris. You can block it. This happened a lot in 2020, and we saw pollsters do it. They overstated Biden's margin because all of these Zoomers were at home during the pandemic going, orange man bad, click, 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 every survey they could. And then they sent it to all their other friends who did orange man bad. And if you don't know what you're doing, your survey will be tainted. And that is what happened with the Marist poll. So there are certainly going to be voters who are for Trump that took that, grabbed that survey and said, just alter the ID and it'll let you take it. No doubt. But in our research and in our experience, liberals do it more. All right. So it's not good regardless of who does. And by the way, in 2016, Trumpers used to do the same stuff. The online polling was very new. They thought they were fooling somebody, and they would send back all these ridiculous margins for Trump. And it was very simple because when you do it and you exclude, here's the Florida poll right here. See this? That is a hidden value, a URID, a URL RID. It returns a value. If I don't know or recognize that value, it's out of here. And then also you block. I mean, there's a setting to block it, but it doesn't always work, which is why that ID is so crucial. And if you can't later match up those UIDs, then it's garbage, or RIDs, whatever you want to call them. Everyone's probably a little bit different based on their service, but based on their technology. They did not. I was easily able to verify what a voter was saying, and I was easily able to verify what one of the respondents who was legitimately, randomly derived randomly from a voter file and was given that poll via text message. It was very simple to see what he was talking about, and you could change it multiple times, and it was. So there you go. Again, Mr. Big Shots, Mr. High Quality. And everybody's like, oh, the Marist poll is actually the most accurate poll in 2016. They at the last minute herded to a Hillary Clinton +2. Before that, they had ridiculous margins for her. And by the way, they're also one of the only polls to still project that John Kerry would win the popular vote in 2004. Like, this has been going on for a long time. All right. When you move into other modes of collection, they could have cleared this up real easy, Laura, and just responded and said, yes, we did exclude them. But they didn't, because they didn't. And they don't want to be on the record saying something that may later be verifiably proven false. All right. Yes, you could still wait, but it doesn't matter. All right. Why? Well, let's say I'm trying to think of a profession. You're a suburban wife and you don't have a college degree, right? But you're in a circle of other women who are in your general area. You have a friend circle, locate, whatever it may be. Obviously, your friend circle does not reflect the overall electorate of non-college women in the state of Georgia. But you're going to send that survey to everybody who you know is going to click Harris. Okay? All right, so just there's no way to wait for that, because that is quite literally a form of a cognitive bias that you're sending it out because you want to reaffirm. And he did just text me, by the way, so he is listening, right? He said, I'm watching. He knows. We all know. Brother, I tried to get them on the record to say we did not use the responses without unique IDs attached to them. They would not say that because it's very clear they did not. So again, they probably would not know that unless they've been proficient in this mode for a while. All right? But they're not. Damn. I'm not that old yet, but I sure am remembering, like it was yesterday, how they mocked these modes, right? Oh, it's not a high quality poll. All right. It is October 25th. We have now reached another phase of the campaign. We'll go into the early vote updates very shortly, but it is now time for our favorite segment, Mock Harry Enten. Now, I know Harry is only 12, so he probably doesn't remember back in 2016 when we hit this phase of the campaign. And that was watching the polls tighten very quickly nationally. And we entered this phase because Clinton was still polling so strong in the battleground states. We entered this phase when people like Harry and the election mafia said, Trump could win the popular vote, but lose the Electoral College. The Electoral College bias is in favor of non-college whites. Does not make any sense to argue that he could win the popular vote and lose the Electoral College. And I'm going to go through, there will be times when I stop him to correct things that he says, but it has been a very long time, folks. I just mentioned it before. Bush in 2004 was the last Republican to win the popular vote. And before that, guess how long it had been? His daddy. So let's cue it. In 1988.
Finally get his great white whale. Harris versus Trump national march. And you mentioned that New York Times poll, a tie. That's actually right in the middle of the spectrum when we're talking about recent polling data. You don't have to look very far to find Donald Trump ahead nationally.
The New York Times poll is technically not tied. The New York Times poll is Trump +1. The full ballot with everybody is Trump +1. We will do the same thing where we will do the head-to-head. And then we will do the full ballot. We'll probably even do the generic someone else. All right. But it's on there right now, and I probably am not going to take it off. I'll probably leave every ballot scenario on there so we can better understand how the presence of other people on the ballot may hurt or help certain candidates, one or the other, and vice versa. And it's just different in different states, but it gives us a better perspective. It's one more data point. So we'll probably keep it on there. However, most of the other polls that he has up there, including the Wall Street Journal poll, the CNBC poll, the Ipsos poll, do have third-party choices. So I don't understand why Harry decided to take the headline head-to-head number and put it in between the rest of them, because those are not comparable situations. The Wall Street Journal poll, in fact, had other options. And the Wall Street Journal poll was Trump +3 with those other options. So if you were going to do an apples to apples, the New York Times poll should be Trump +1. She loses support. He does not, basically. All right. So again, here we go.
He was up by 2 points in the CNBC poll, up by 3 in the Wall Street Journal poll. Very close races within the margin of error. But then the same thing on the other side, right? You have Harris up by 3 points according to Ipsos. The Say 24 YouGov poll, it's a bunch of academics, also has
It's a
Harris
bunch of bullshit is what it is. Pause. It's a bunch of BS is what it is. The Say 24 poll. You know, Harry is scraping the bottom of the barrel when he has to go and get the Ipsos poll and a poll that none of his viewers have heard before, the Say 24. I'm sorry, Harry. Is that on Real Clear Politics? I don't see it. All right. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel to find where she's up by 3 and 2 and he's up by 3 or 2 and others, et cetera, et cetera. If we look at the Real Clear Politics polling average, you can see that there is a whole lot of red toward the end. I thought trends are all that mattered, right? What happened to that? Trends matter. The trend's more important. Forget about one poll over another poll. It's the aggregate and the trends that matter. Well, folks, here's the aggregate. Does that look familiar to you? Because it should. It looks a lot like 2004 and 2016. It sure does. Only in 2004, Kerry's lead really began to vanish at the end of this, this month. The Kerry drop was before Harris's decline, and that is a matter of timing. That is because of the timing of the switcheroo, the convention, the media propaganda push that ballooned her favorability for a short amount of time, and then she collapsed. But she had less time to do it, and it was later in the process than Kerry. Kerry was different. He was a legitimate Democratic nominee. I think that people are going to have to look, if this election ends up the way most people at this point think it's going to end up. All right. By the way, CNBC is also Trump up. We'll see. Fox is Trump up. We'll see where CNN and Fox both end. I don't think those are their final polls, but the New York Times putting Trump up by 1 and having a tie in the full ballot is a huge deal. Right? To pretend it isn't. Yeah, I'm watching Democrats cross-tab dive on Twitter, on X, and I'm watching them like try to tear into the sample of the New York Times poll. There is nothing wrong with the New York Times poll. The electorate in 2020 was roughly 48% male and 52% female. The party ID split was roughly even. It was D+1. They now have an R+1 sample. There is nothing wrong with that. Their non-college vote versus their college vote all looks very fine to me. They're trying to like rip into these tiny little things so they can cope. The last poll was Harris plus what, 3 or 4? It is not anymore. The trend matters. That is called a collapse, ladies and gentlemen. That is called a collapse. And somehow she's going to collapse in the national popular vote, but she's not going to collapse in the states. Yeah, all right. Let's go back to this.
Is, with the popular vote, which we really haven't focused upon, a very, very tight race, John. Fact is, Donald Trump is very much in a position he could win the popular vote, which, of course, is something he would absolutely love to do.
And let me also say the Wall Street Journal poll had Republicans up by 4 now. One of the things that I am going to be looking at in our final national poll is where Republicans were in this generic ballot. It is possible that they wind up polling a little bit ahead of Trump, or even performing a little bit ahead of Trump in the House vote, but they've been trailing him this entire time. That being said, the picture's not clear in the Midwest, and we've showed you some. You're going to get new Midwest numbers. But even in the last one that we put out and it's public, you can see it. You can see it clear as day. Republicans on the generic ballot had a surge. They did. They were down, 4 here, 2 here, 5 here. They were down all over the Midwest, in the state. I'm talking about statewide generic ballots. And now they are not. Now they are up a point here, up a point there. So it will be interesting to see if that is the case in our national poll as well, or even if they're up at all, because in our last national poll for the generic ballot, it was Democrat +2. So interesting to see. Really, we'll keep an eye on that. But the bottom line is the Wall Street Journal poll is really bad news. It's a bipartisan poll. The CNBC poll is Hillary Clinton's pollster. I kid you not. It's conducted by Hart Research, Richard Hart, who was Hillary Clinton's pollster and has long been a Democratic pollster for presidential campaigns. And then, by the way, Public Opinion Strategies, who was super bearish on Trump this entire year. That's DeSantis's pollster. And then you have the Wall Street Journal poll, which is Tony, of course, with Anzalone, or Anzalone. I'm Italian, I say Anzalone. But Fabrizio and Anzalone, one Republican, one Democrat, they barely understated Republican support nationally in the generic ballot in 2020. They did 22, excuse me. They did a very good job. They understated them, but they barely understated them. What else? There's another one I was thinking of as well. Right. And then you had NBC News and the Morning Consult, who were way off in left field. And the Morning Consult was Democrat +5. Of course, that was like an 8-point miss. And then NBC, I believe, was at least defendable. I want to say it was Democrat +2, something like that. So, I mean, really at this point, why am I saying this? Folks, it's trends. It's the tranches that we've been talking about all year, right? And if you are the only poll that still has Harris really leading, all right, outside the sampling error, and you have Harris doing well in the battleground states, and it's against the backdrop, the backdrop of all of these other polls, and you're someone who's a repeat offender. I mean, do we have to show it again? Can we get that slide? I mean, there it is. That's actually the Morning Consult. Oh, its better one is actually here. That includes the Morning Consult's 2022 as well. Democrat 48, Republicans 43. Of course, that was way, way off. The Republicans won by 2.8%. All right, so way off, even though the sampling error was supposed to be 1.9. And then the rest of the ones above the 22 track record is the state level polling for the Morning Consult, which has been all over the place for Bloomberg News this cycle. So again, it's like you have these repeat offenders trying to project this race as something that it obviously is not in the rest of the consensus. And at this point, October 25th, we keep saying, you'll hear people say, well, it's still very soon. We can't identify a trend. Folks, I told you there was a trend 2 weeks ago. Did I or did I not say? I said, look, cannot tell you for sure, but I need to stay in the field a little bit longer because I think I see something. And then when I finally released a poll, I said, this is why I wanted to stay in the field longer, because I thought I saw something. I saw something. Everybody else is seeing it now. Laura, I don't understand this woman. She's got Beyonce she's coming out with tonight on a Friday night. Laura, no one's going to be watching her event with Beyonce. All right? Nobody's going to be doing it on a Friday night. You know where Kamala Harris is right now? In bed. I'm not kidding. This woman's schedule doesn't start for another 3 hours. She is now getting a lot of complaints from Democrats. Like, why aren't you doing more? Nobody ever wins when they're on the defensive like this, Laura. Oh, you can hear me feeding back. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I'm coming out of your computer and it's going back into your microphone. But yeah, nobody ever wins when they're pointing fingers, when they're on the defensive in these states. And, oh, Rich, she's in Texas. Well, Politico shed light on that. She's not in Texas because she thinks she can win Texas. She's there to maybe help Walred and to help Democrats with the abortion referendum. That's it. And they are kind of hoping that, I don't know why Republicans would do that. Go ahead. I'll shut up. You talk.
That was just, never mind.
Yeah, something going on with that. Maybe next time. Swing and a miss. I don't know why Republicans did this. I don't know why they did this. Laura wanted to say something. You can come in here and say it. She wants to say, what do you want? Everyone loves to hear from you. Probably more than me. Be honest. Be honest. She's laughing. Be honest. It's all right. Let's listen to Harry. Let's finish Harry first.
Would be something very different than we have seen compared to last time and the polling compared to last time.
Exactly right. So I went back through the time machine, all right? I went back through the time machine to see where were the past two races at this point in the campaign. Look, Harris in the average poll right now is up by 1, well within the margin of error. You go back 4 years ago, Joe Biden was well ahead of Donald Trump in the national popular vote poll.
And I just showed you Harris is not up by 1 anymore. Maybe in his aggregate where he includes surveys from academics who think they're pollsters and they suck every year, maybe that's the aggregate where she's still up in. But in the actual real aggregate that we can compare apples to apples with, I mean, I don't know. Did he have an aggregate in 2016? I thought he was still in high school. I thought he was middle school. Yeah, I thought he was graduating the 8th grade back then or some shit. I mean, are you kidding me? What aggregate does he have to compare to? It's RCP. So let's stick with apples to apples, please. In the RCP average, her lead is evaporated. And in truth, it's a tie now. It's like legit a tie, folks. It's 48.5 for Trump to 48.5 for Harris. And in truth, the only thing that was keeping the Harris's lead was the morning consult poll. If that was not in there, it would be Trump plus whatever. Even Suffolk USA Today in the middle of the month was only Harris plus 1. Emerson was Harris plus 1. I don't know if that's Emerson's final or if they're going to get another national. Atlas Intel, Trump plus 3. Fox News, Trump plus 2. CNBC, Trump plus 2. The Wall Street Journal, Trump plus 3. Forbes, Trump plus 2. He forgot about the Forbes poll, by the way. Isn't that convenient? Rasmussen, Trump plus 2. And then the Reuters Ipsos poll that he is showing was Harris plus 3, which again is not a great poll. Is it possible all of these polls can be right this time and all the ones that are usually right are wrong? I mean, sure. And I could sprout a tail out of my ass and start swinging from trees like a monkey. Okay.
He was up by 9. Even Hillary Clinton was up by 6 points. So now Donald Trump's in a position he really hasn't been before at this point in the campaign where he could truly compete, and we can truly say that the popular vote at this point is way too close to call. Of course, this is only going back 8 years. I wanted to jump even further back in my time machine to get an understanding. Hey, I haven't heard about a Republican potentially winning the popular vote in a while. And it turns out a Republican winning the popular vote, it hasn't happened since 2004 in George W. Bush defeating John Kerry. And that's only the one time that it has happened. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 1988 to find another one when it was George W. Bush's father, George H.W. Bush, winning the popular vote over Michael Dukakis. So the fact that the polls right now are so close, John, the fact that Donald Trump has a legitimate shot of winning the popular vote is something I think a lot of folks, including in my line of work, really didn't think could possibly happen when Donald Trump was running last time around. He could make history, not just for Donald Trump, for a Republican candidate as well.
Now, there are...
Here we go. Here comes the cope. Are you ready? And we got to speed this along here because we have Jason Corley from Quantus coming on in a little bit. He's going to share with us his new polling. And the reason why I wanted to talk to him is because what if Donald Trump does win the popular vote? It's like suddenly all these maps that have been passed around, all right, they're going to be wrong. And you're going to hear Harry entertain some new fantastical scenario. Okay.
Some reasons for this, and I think Democrats' heads are all exploding out there watching this right now. There are some reasons for this, which you're going to explain, but also begin to raise the possibility that we could see the reverse. We could see the reverse of things we've seen where a Republican wins the popular vote, but there's a chance for the Democrat to win the Electoral College.
Yeah, part of my job is to warn our viewers on either side of the aisle of an event that may occur that they don't necessarily like, and Donald Trump winning the popular vote could absolutely happen. You might as well wrap your...
You should have been doing this for weeks, Harry. You should have been doing this for weeks. Because people are going to flip out. because you told them she was the greatest thing since toilet paper, and they don't think they can lose. The chaos. I mean,
your minds around it now, folks, if you don't like Donald Trump.
well, gee,
But
thanks, Harry.
on the flip side of that, a potentially good sign for Democrats is, why is Donald Trump doing so well in the popular vote polls? You can dig down into the state level polling, and you can see that Donald Trump is doing particularly well in California, Florida, New York, and Texas. Of course, none of these states are really on the board at this point, so Donald Trump may end up gaining in the national popular vote polls, but actually is wasting votes, which could in fact lead to a case where Kamala Harris could sneak by in the Electoral College by sweeping those Great Lake Battleground states, which at this point are way too close to call, John.
Stop it, Harry. Back to planet Earth. California moved to the right more for Trump from 2016 to 2020. So a shift is expected, actually, closer to Donald Trump, because California was one of only a handful of states that voted more to the right in 2020 than it did in 2016. So back on planet Earth, that doesn't make any sense. And then you have a problem because we just got the New York Times poll. They're claiming that she's rebounding to a normal margin in New York. So the very same, but now whether or not she does is a different story. But the very same pollster, because Siena College polls for the New York Times, the very same pollster, damn fly, man, whew, shoe fly, is not saying that this is because of a shift in these areas. Trump's lead in the Midwest is the reason in the New York Times poll for this. Okay, it has nothing. He's doing better in the South than in the Midwest. That is where he needs to do better to win the Electoral College. In the South, he needs to make sure he holds on to North Carolina, and he needs to take back Georgia. In the Midwest, the Great Lakes states. So what he's saying doesn't jive. It simply doesn't. And again, I know Harry's only like 12, so he doesn't remember 2016, but I do. And I remember this same nonsense. Everybody knows that the Electoral College favors non-college, or I wouldn't say that. The bias is in favor of non-college voters. They are overrepresented, or so they say. I tend to not like to use that language because it's like they're not represented at all in the popular vote because of immigration, and nobody asked or nobody approved or voted on the idea of New York and California allowing mass numbers of illegal immigrants to come in 35 years ago, et cetera, to have their families here, and now are at a point where they're eligible to vote. It's like the biggest political irony ever. And I got Jason waiting. I'm going to speed up and shut up. But the biggest political irony ever would be if Donald Trump won the popular vote, and it's because he did better with Hispanics, who they imported in mass thinking they would get a permanent underclass, and instead they got their own political demise. That would be, it's the story of it's like the electoral story of the year if this happens. All right, let me shut up and bring on Jason. Jason Corley, of course, from Quantus Insights. You guys know him on Twitter. If you don't, you should. All right. So I just want to bring him on and thank him for joining Inside the Numbers. Welcome aboard, Jason. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man. Great. Glad to be here. Good morning. Good morning.
I'm so glad you came on today. What a perfect time for you to come on to discuss what you're seeing in the field. You jump back in, I guess. It's like me. It's like you think you're done. I got my final. I'm finished. But then you're like, no, there's things happening. One more here, one more there, right? Yep. Because you run a lot of modeling, which is really cool. People should check out. If you like our stuff, you'll geek out over on Quantus Insights on Twitter. Jason, explain to people what a Trump +1 popular vote means.
So, yeah. So I play with a few scenarios, and that's a good question because we always want to talk about the relative bias across the battleground states. And right. I mean, you can do for one, but there's also what I call top out. And that means, well, it could mean, it doesn't mean, it could mean that there's just so many votes the electorate can support in Pennsylvania or Michigan Meaning, could you just simply add the relative bias on top of Trump's national popular vote victory, and you add it 2 to 3 points, and so it's Trump 52 to 46? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really look at it that way. I try to weight current polling against the relative bias with the factor of the national popular vote, and create a comprehensive model. Then run Monte Carlo simulations, add some variance and things of that nature. But to answer your quick question, it's probably not going to be all that tight of a race in some of these states. If you look at the margins and how they're supposed to behave, I know the polling is showing it tight right now, but it looks like a 312, maybe even 313. Yeah. And that's because you get the little district there in Nebraska. Yeah, it could be that. Or you start seeing these swings where Minnesota becomes into play. I'm not saying anything that's new here. The map does start doing some funky things here, but it seems to be the consensus is 312, and that's about where my models fall. However,
is it with your model? And I know you run simulations. The highest frequency resultant for a Trump win, you could have him a little lower, a little higher, but the highest frequency for you is 312, right? Me too.
Yeah, it opens up. There's plenty of scenarios where he picks up an additional state, and it's usually Minnesota.
Minnesota's the one.
Yeah, and then sometimes New Hampshire. It just really depends. What factors I have. I know he's been doing better. My model. So way back, September timeframe.
Yeah,
I had him winning Nevada.
Yeah,
the polls didn't. My models did, by the way. I didn't poll Nevada until September. And I had it 48.8 to 47.7. And that was before this trend. I hit it right at a good time, because after that, some polls followed up, and it showed some similar scenarios there. But my models had Nevada flipping quicker than Michigan, which was the opposite of what most people were showing. But that's the way it worked. That's the way I create these things. It showed it that way. And there's a lot of correlation between Nevada and Michigan. Now, I know people, the claws come out when you say stuff like that, because they're completely different states. One's a Rust Belt, one's a Sun Belt.
Yeah.
And demographically, they're totally different. Industry-wise, they're totally different. I'm simply talking about deltas, voter sentiment, and margins. Michigan and Nevada have more in common in how they lean and break, as opposed to how Michigan leans and breaks with Wisconsin and Michigan, which is very fascinating that I found. And that's how I was able to understand how Michigan and Nevada, how they could play off one another. So in any case, hope that wasn't too long of an answer.
No, not at all. And I love the art form of polling, but I think it's, it was really clear. And I did this in 2018 to try to show people that, and real modeling, which is not based on poll reading, glorified poll reading, like some of the other models on the internet. Yep. Can often do better than the polling. And I'm like Mike Pence over here every time this fly comes back. But basically, we showed people here are the two scenarios. One is the polling scenario. Here's what it says. And then here's the model. It's to keep the model alone and separate. And the model actually outperformed. And I think that, we're doing, most of us are doing our best, but there's just still a lot of problems with the polling industry. So, we use it as a tool and try to tell people that it's not perfect. I think that sometimes we've gotten some results. So, we've done well. So people expect it to be like on the money like that every time. And it's just not likely that's going to be the case. And you're always going to misfire somewhere. But Nevada has been one of those states where, because the Republicans think it's like fool's gold and they haven't picked it up, we've overlooked the trend, and the trend has been heavily favorable. And eventually, I'm using this term, you hit that political event horizon. I think that's what's happening here with Democrats this year, where they had enjoyed victories, even though the trends were moving against them. And then, you look at a race like in 22, they barely held on in that Senate race. And now this is a presidential race. If it does flip, it really shouldn't surprise anyone, because the trends demographically and the voter registration trends are just a product of that, folks. I mean, it's a product of that. So, but with the, the vote moving the way it has nationally, it's going to impact these battleground races. And you went in the field in Virginia. And you did so after somebody just showed me an internal poll. All right, this was days ago when you and I were talking about you going into Virginia, and it was close. I mean, it was close. And so when I had talked with you, I wasn't all that surprised because I mean, you have the campaigns, the Harris campaign deciding I got to go back and defend it, and you have the Trump campaign saying I think I'm going to go visit it. I think I'll go to Richmond. So you watch what the campaigns do, not what they say. And it very much seems to, that you were onto something. You were onto something. So
Look,
what do you have for us?
This raw data sample, I've conducted 8 or 9 polls now. So I'm not a veteran, but I'm getting, I'm understanding now that I can rip off a piece of raw data and I can tell you, So
you can glean from it.
Yeah. So listen, you can drink from this thing right now. You can drink from the raw data right now. And I've never had raw data look like that once in this entire cycle. Also, I have a New Hampshire poll going in the background, and you can drink from that raw sample as well. So look, halfway through this sample, Trump was up 5 points in Virginia through the raw sample, untouched, unweighted.
People know that. My viewers are there. They get it.
Yep. So in any case, it's a close race in Virginia, and I'll just tell you what we got. We got Harris up about 1 point in Virginia. So that's about where we're at. It's about 49 to 48, 49 to 47.8 and some change around that margin. So it's a 1 point race in Virginia, according to what we found off this sample. Of course, did our due diligence and weighted it, and that's where we're at. Now,
go ahead, finish.
I conducted a poll in August in Virginia, and I had Harris up +3, and that caused a lot of feedback on Twitter. Some of it not so polite, but there's been some other polling to validate that.
Welcome to the polling industry, unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah, you did. You came out with that poll, and I remember that. And then Christopher Newport had come out showing very similar numbers. And basically, of course, I mean, this is a thankless job, and people attack you if they don't like your numbers. So it is what it just comes with the territory, unfortunately. But some people out there, I remember it like it was yesterday. Newport nailed 2020. They were right on the money in Virginia. So regardless, even if he doesn't carry Virginia, it suggests a similar swing like we've seen nationwide and in other states to justify, like a Wall Street Journal, Trump +3, for instance, nationally. And I think Virginia Republicans, when you talk to them, they'll tell you they think they have a better shot there than polls had been giving them generally. And they'll point to the early vote. They'll tout the early vote, right? But also, 23 was not a bad cycle. They technically lost, but they were able to win everything that I believe was Biden +8 and below. I believe every district. About 75% of the ones that were up, they did win, that were competitive, that were Youngkin Biden districts. So yeah, I mean, the argument has been, if that's the case in Virginia, they cannot survive that kind of swing in these other battleground states. They just can't. So, I mean, look, bottom line is, when you're in the field, what are you seeing with the non-white voters? The numbers that you're finding is it the same story in Virginia that everybody's seeing everywhere?
It absolutely is. So, Black male voters are supporting Trump, and according to this poll in Virginia, up to 31%.
Yeah.
And then he's almost doubled his female Black women support. So we have it around 21% of the African American vote in Virginia. The Hispanic vote, he's done some marginal improvements. He's in the 40s, and when you combine the other, it comes out to she's up about 14 points in that. But again, though, the white support's really going to, if it breaks harder than my poll, let me just say this. Going back and doing my benchmarking and making sure that I'm pinching myself as I'm doing this weighting, this sample, the weighted results are looking a lot more like the Youngkin exit polling results, far more than it looks like the 2020. So I don't know if he's going to win it. It just may not be there. It may just be out of reach. But if the white vote breaks a little harder than what I have projected, then all bets are off. It could be, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. This has been one of the more excruciatingly painful polls because I know so much is on the line with this state, and lo and behold, I'm here with a sample that sort of justifies it. So we'll see.
In 2016, we understated Trump in states like Iowa and Ohio. We knew he was going to take them, but Virginia was one where we did understate Clinton a little bit, but it did tighten like this at the end very fast. I mean, Clinton was leading by 8 points routinely throughout the month of September, and it just did not at all seem like a battleground state. In the final couple of weeks, he pulls within 2 points. It backs up a little bit. She ultimately won it by just around 5, folks, for people who don't remember. But it was so close, they did not call it for a while. In the early hours of the next day, it was the wee hours of the morning of the next day, because we just didn't know what was still outstanding in the Shenandoah. One of the keys to Youngkin's win was that he drove the mountain vote way higher than what it is normally as a share of the electorate. And if Trump does get the mountain vote, between like 17, 19%, he's got a shot.
Yeah.
He's got, which is insane. We should not be having this conversation. For a little history lesson, folks, Biden won Virginia by 10 points. All right. It was, this was a doubling of Hillary Clinton support.
Yep.
So the fact that we're even here having this conversation right now should tell you everything you really need to know about the trajectory of this race. Are you going to do another national poll, or you are? Yeah, I am too.
I'm going to do it. We decided that earlier this week when we were putting together our budget.
Yeah.
And we decided we're going to launch the Friday before and have it released Monday. And then I'll be in San Diego. So I have it all done and ready and published. I'll be in San Diego Monday for the election week. But in any case, we are going to release another. We're going to have a couple more state polls as well. Just real quick on that Virginia poll, though. Listen, I'm not seeing +7 and +8 out of this. It is not.
It's
plus
not
7.
there. Yeah.
It is not a +7 race in the state of Virginia. It's just not. So I don't know what the other pollsters are seeing. Maybe I just hit it at this right time with this, this enthusiasm's going on. So in any case, we got New Hampshire going in the background as well. We're going to have a couple other states. We're going to hit, we're going to go back to the Rust Belt, hit Michigan.
We are.
Get a couple more out of that. We're running out of time, but it's going to be a busy stretch here, but we're willing to do it. And then, of course, focusing on the models, getting that stuff up there. I'm going to have a final projection on all my models in probably more of a public release style versus Twitter. There's some things we got to put together and run, calibrate, make some refinements, make some judgment calls here and there. But I feel pretty good about where we're headed. It's going to be it's going to be a fun election. It's going to be a fun election week. So
I was just going to say, I don't know what you have. Should have Laura, talk to you about this. We're going to have a great little election night. We always do. You're always welcome on to talk about what you see too. We're going to do some exit polling, which is neat. I didn't even tell people that yet. I haven't told them that yet, but as you'll find out, and I'm sure already, like, this is very busy in the final hour. So you don't want to, I have told people, I don't want to bite off more than we can chew. I just don't, we'll do the national poll this weekend. You get the same schedule as us, and Michigan and Pennsylvania basically chose to focus on. Florida is done.
Yeah.
It's not a race. This is not a race at all. I cannot believe we're in a place where I'm going to put out a Florida poll that looks like this. I just remember it being razor thin all the time. And 2020 wasn't really razor thin, but it still was. We're talking about low single digits, right? This thing's gone, Jason. This thing is gone.
Well, you mentioned on your show, it was a while back. I don't know if you remember, but I created this Florida model for Eric Dougherty at Florida Voice back in June. And just based on modeling voter registration, turnout trends, how these counties are broke, just some good regression analysis based on a lot of factors. And we had Trump winning Florida back in June. Of course, Biden was still in anywhere from 11 to 15 points.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned the poll.
Yep.
And you said, "Hey, I got it right there."
It's there.
Yeah. So it's been breaking. It's running away. We'll see how much of an impact that has on other states. I don't know. It seems there should be at least some impact. We'll see about North Carolina, and then the pool North Carolina has on Pennsylvania, and the pool Pennsylvania has on Wisconsin, Michigan, or et cetera, et cetera. Something like a domino effect. And I like to play with the constellation matrix and try to figure out this order of magnitude, or these second, third order effects as states break a certain way by a certain margin, and see if we can extrapolate that and pull some, and pull some ideas out of how what the electorate's going to look like and what the battleground states are going to look like. So
You'll love this then. When you have some time, I know there's not much of it these days, but when you have some time, look at Duval County in Florida and its relationship with Georgia. The state, how it votes overall. It's the most, it's not totally insane when you think about it, because there are a lot of overlapping demographic groups. But the fact, so these things, as I'm polling, I look at this and it looks like Duval's Trump by like 5. Now, of course, it's one county and a much larger sample. But when 2020, I remember that. I mean, it was pretty clear he'd lose Duval by a little bit, a hair. So I wasn't surprised. Duval swinging back like that does indicate like what most people project for Georgia at this point. You'll if you like looking at different relationships, check out.
I will. Where do you see Georgia based on that? Do you have an idea about where you think the swing, what Georgia's going to
3 to
like?
5 points? Yeah, 3 to 5 points. That's what it would suggest. I mean, again, Duval can be a little bit it's more, the swings can be more in Duval than the state overall in Georgia, but they tend to move in the same direction. If he wins Duval but 3 to 5, then it's it bodes very well for him in Georgia. It does, especially because Biden won Duval last time. I mean, it was very close, but he did win it. And the question was, just like Georgia, are these gains Democrats made in 20 with these voters, especially certain white voters that aren't high educated, but they do have an education, 4-year degree? Is this permanent, or are they still swing voters as they always have been? Like a 4-year degree voter is a high swing voting pool. It used to be. And you get into postgraduate, different story. Advanced degrees, advanced studies, different story. But if this is right, then it would suggest that Republicans can claw back some of this vote. It's not gone forever. Like, for instance, I don't think postgraduates will be coming back anytime soon,
Well, I've seen some things, and I'm telling you, I've seen some wacky stuff. He's not doing bad with master degree. He's doing
40s. Are you looking?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, me too.
The bachelor's is a little different, but masters, he's holding his own. I mean, he's losing, but it's not what you would think.
Yeah.
It's
not the 70-30
I'm also seeing a percentage of crossover from Biden to Trump, and I'm getting Trump in Virginia pulling about 7% of the Democrat vote, whereas Harris only pulls about 4% of the Republican vote. So there's some wacky stuff going on here that we need to monitor, and just hopefully we just do good weighting. We know what our electorate model is supposed to look like. Yeah. We do a lot of raking. We're trying to get this stuff, these respondents down, and drill down into this data and make sure that we're not overinflating one demographic, or it's just a process. And I stayed up late last night trying to do this because I know so much is riding on this poll. But in any case, man, I'm going to go with the data. I'm going to go with what we find, and this is what we found. So
trust yourself. Trust it. Trust your numbers don't lie. Trust the data. Anytime I've learned, that Ohio, I just mentioned in 16. That state taught me a lesson. We actually had from our second to last to our final poll a decrease in support for Trump. That was entirely my fault. Never do that stuff again. I just did not believe the Obama-Trump voter in the Ohio Valley, especially. I remember, Laura, I'm sure you remember it like it was yesterday. I'm like, no way, Laura. There's just no way. He's never going to do that well here. And they're not going to be that much of the electorate as they are claiming. And I just never again. Yep. Just trust the data, trust the voter, and that's it. That's all you can do, as a pollster.
That's what make a call with North Carolina, Rich, months ago when I polled it. We had it 50 to 48.3, and we come on the back end of a 3 in a row plus 3 Harris polls.
Yeah.
No, that's not what I saw, and that's not what the data said. We drop it September 12th, 50 to 48.3, and then here comes Trafalgar. Here comes Insider Advantage. Here comes a slew of polls validating that. So I learned my lesson there as well. I was like, is he really popping 50 already in September? Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that state is one of the states I tell people all the time, be very careful. For some reason, these media university polls cannot poll it. They just can't. Cunningham by 11, Maris poll. I mean, that's a final poll. I mean, Survey USA, not to beat on it, but I'm not mocking him. I'm not doing that to mock anybody. But I mean, Cunningham +8. I mean, that come on. I mean, it's constant. And with the exception of 22, I think a few others polled it well, because I remember we were not alone. We had Bud by 4, a little over, and some others did as well because he was ahead in the average. So, but it was toward the end. And it's like the state just doesn't move like that. It's just that you did not get an adequate or representative sample when you did it last month or whatever it was. But, we'll see how it goes this year. Hopefully it's not going to go down again, like, the way it has in the past, the Clinton +6s, the Biden +6s. And then, I mean, Clinton wasn't even close. That was a 10-point miss, Jason. 10-point miss. So
I remember those polls, man. I remember. But hey, we got these run of national polls coming out. I bet New York Times just dropped theirs. It's tied up. Our models have been showing that. You can go on our pinned tweet, see it. We've had it in the 48s, battling in the 48s, low 40 or Harris low 49. So this is going to be interesting. I mean, you cut your teeth on this a long time ago. You were in the Obama era, and then we kind of cut our teeth on this 2016 and 2020 era. And we've never obviously been in a position to where we have a tight national popular race. We're not talking about polling errors anymore. We're talking straight up who's winning the horse race. And right now it's a complete toss-up.
Yeah, it really isn't. People hate that answer. Oh, Rich, who's going to win the popular vote? And the answer is, things are trending in Trump's direction, but it's still within a coin when it comes to the popular vote. That is coin toss territory, folks. I don't know if I have it up here to show, but I have never in all of these years gotten, with 2,000, 3,000 interviews, I have never gotten a 50-50 race. Never, and really it was more like 49.5, 49.
I saw that.
Right? But that happened for the first time. It's just a lot of firsts this year, which is exciting. It is. Well, I hope
we had it 49. I'm sorry, we had it 49.4 to 48.6, and that was last week. That was our national poll with 1,000 likely voters, and I mean, there you go.
I love that you're doing that. By the way, I really hope and encourage more pollsters to do that. Don't round to whole numbers. It's just. I really like show. I mean, let me put it this way. When we count the votes, do we count them 50, 51, 52? We don't. So I really like that you are getting more granular with the top line result. I wish more people would do that. Not because we think we're going to be dead on the decimal, but because this is the way elections are conducted. And, I mean, we should be as consistent and as real life. And transparent.
That's it.
Right. Well, I hope you come back on, man. Talk to us again soon. Yeah, tell everybody where they can follow you. You're a great follow.
Thank you for the segment here, man. I'll be back in touch with you.
Anytime.
We're going to get back and produce these crosstabs, and then public release this poll here within the next hour.
Ooh, yeah. Keep your eye on Twitter, folks, or X. But tell people where they can find you if they don't already on X.
Yeah, Quantus Insights on Twitter. You can follow us on our Substack, and we have a website, quantusinsights.org. But we're definitely all over Twitter. We're easy to find. We publish a lot of stuff on our Substack, beyond politics, sometimes economic stuff, historical stuff in terms of all election and not economic related. And then Quantus Insights, as I said, the website, quantusinsights.org, not to be confused with the Substack.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our Twitter account.
Well, good luck, man. Stay strong, stay busy.
Thank you.
And I'll see you on X in a bit. Looking forward to it.
You bet, man. Appreciate it.
All right, anytime.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
It's Jason from Quantus Insights, folks. Looking forward to it. Look, he sees what he sees. I absolutely do believe it. Now, is he going to carry Virginia? Like, look, if Virginia's not Harris +10, come election night, she's got a problem. It means all of this talk about her doing so well with college-educated white voters, she's going to counter and eclipse the loss in support from non-whites. It's bullshit. It's not going to happen. A bunch of crap. Sorry, Laura. But it's not going to happen if she's going to slip in a state like Virginia. And by the way, we were talking about what does that mean for the national popular vote, the impact on the states. It really does depend on it. I'm glad you like that interview. I did too. He's a cool guy. He's a cool dude trying to do his best, And it's a thankless job, like I said. And sometimes it's worse than that, truthfully. You get abused. Pollsters are just straight up abused. It's really not. Some of them deserve it.
Yeah. Well,
Like the UM poll that came out yesterday, which started in September, Laura. What took a month to collect 800 interviews? I am not a fan of long duration polling. You guys know that. There's two words for you: rolling average. The gold standard. And they were the gold standard. I'm not even mocking them. They were the one and only gold standard. Gallup. Rolling average. You ever see Gallup release a poll over a month? There's multiple reasons for why that is not a legitimate practice. And the Washington Post did it too for the Battleground states, even though they've never done that before. Never. And the number one, because I don't believe that public opinion moves as dramatically as public polls would lead you to believe. I just don't. And I'm pretty sure over the years we've demonstrated that conclusively. But two, the environment does change, sometimes dramatically. And just because you spoke to, 100 men or whatever, 800 men in the month of September does not mean 800 men in the month of October are going to give you the same answer. You're going to speak to different ones, and it will could dramatically change the result of that poll. But getting back to, I know it's 101, and I'm going to take a break here in a second. But folks, depending on how you model it, because of who do you think votes what way, right? If Trump does win the popular vote, it does put states like Minnesota and Maine on the table. Virginia gets close. If not, I mean, he could theoretically, it depends on Democrats' votes. He could theoretically carry the state of Virginia. It's just a very heavy lift. You need two things. You need like all the political, like Youngkin, all the political stars aligned for Youngkin. Right? They got over 4 million votes. True. But the votes that were missing, by majority would have almost certainly have been McAuliffe votes. You need the mind changers to change. You need your vote to be a higher share of the electorate, which is how Youngkin got the mountain vote to about 19%. And for Trump, when he made it close against Hillary Clinton, it was only 15%. So the Shenandoah Valley's got to be higher, closer to 1 in 5. You got to change dramatically the minds of swing voters. And you got to add some new groups, which, as Jason Corley was just talking about, he's getting 30% with black men. 30%. We see it every day. And we didn't see the doubling in the support among African-American women for Trump in 2020. We are seeing it now. So what does that mean? What does the New York Times have the black vote at in this latest poll? In 2011, I think. In 2020, they had Trump winning 4% of the black vote. They basically missed it by triple. I mean, if you look at the Edison research, they say 12. If you look at VoteCast, I believe they say 11 or something like that, or 10. If you look at the voter validated studies from Harvard, I think they say 9 or 10. It's been a bit. And then I believe it's the census that says 9. So between 9 and 12. The New York Times missed it at least by double. At least slightly more. Let's call it 9. And most of us that did miss it, and I didn't. My black vote share in my final poll was 12%. Yeah, some research was 12, so it's very, very close. Even if it was 9, that's still well within the sampling error. It's a good call. And then this year, we are seeing that movement with black women too. So it's like, it's entirely possible that the margins, the shifts are in line with what happens, CNN's 47-47. That's them hedging their bets. Is that both ballots or just one with CNN? I also have this other. Listen, I got to tell you, there aren't many undecided voters left, but the ones that are in the battleground states, and we're only in Michigan and Pennsylvania, the ones that are, well, that's not true. We just left Florida, but it's not a battleground state. They don't like this Hitler message.
Nope.
They don't like this shit at all. In fact, In fact, I am, and I know that there are I know of two stories, one of which is probably, like Tom Bevan from Real Clear Politics said, the New York Times is on it. So I think they are going to publish this story. It's ridiculous. All right. I feel like from what I'm hearing from voters, these late October surprises could just backfire. It could do more harm to Harris than they think they're going to do to Trump. I really think that. Because even if it is severe, voters are saying, why now? Guy was a celebrity for 30 years in the public life. He's been president before. He's run for president 3 times. Only now? They've been promising this one story for years, and nobody can confirm whether or not it's him, because the only source that could says it's not, which leads you to believe it's fabricated. I don't know how they're going to make this work. I really don't. But nobody else touched it. So why are they touching it now? By the way, the last CNN poll was Harris +3. So this is absolutely a remain deadlock nationally. That's not a deadlock. That's not a deadlock. That's a surge for Trump. Yeah. But they're fine. Their poll before, I'm looking for it right now just to be, I'm fairly certain their poll before was Harris +3. Harris +1. Okay, with the full ballot, Harris +3. Yeah, that's a slip. That's a slip for Harris. That's a slip for her and a slight increase. So what it looks like is that he reached a 49% threshold against Biden. It looks like he's on his way back to his threshold, and she is on the way down. Yeah, I knew this. 49% to 46%. Okay, no, they had Trump up by 3 when he just dropped out before the media propaganda push. Yeah. It was Trump by 3 over Harris, and then they pumped her, and they had Harris up, and now they're falling again. Listen, if we remember, next week, if I obviously can't do much of it today, we have got to talk about the impact of trust to handle issues. Folks, what we call overall trust to handle issues is a component of the mood of the electorate variable. Okay. It is a component of it. It's not all of it, but it's a big part of it. If you just pull out trust to handle issues, and then obviously the most important issues matter, right? Stop.
Be good.
Please be good. Now you got me totally.
Sorry. I'm trying not to. See, you called me in here.
I like you here with me. The states, for instance, in where voters trust on the main issues a certain candidate more than in the other, that candidate will take those states. It is almost always the case. Actually, I'm struggling to find one. I'm sure that we do have one logged in the PPD model thing, but I don't know that we do, because I know it's not 100%, but it's like 90-something%. And for instance, in 2020, in the states where the economy was a more important issue and voters trusted Trump more than Biden, actually, Florida is what I was thinking, but in the case of Florida, they trusted Trump on everything more. They trust even on COVID, on the pandemic. But regardless, there's a perfect example. They're not going to vote for another candidate when they trust the other candidate more. It seems like self-evident, right? In Ohio, the economy was more important to them than the pandemic, and they trusted Trump more on the economy. And it was about no, Ohio's a bad example. It's another one. But no, it's not a bad example because it went for Trump, right? In Pennsylvania, they trusted Trump more on the economy, but the economy was secondary to the pandemic. And they trusted Biden more on the pandemic. Biden inched it out. Because those two were so close, it mattered, how big is the margin that they trust Trump more, right? Harris, for instance, has a comparable margin to Trump on immigration, right? I mean, Trump has on immigration. She has a comparable advantage as far as the margin on abortion. The problem for her is that abortion is not a more important issue in most of these states than immigration. Coupled with the two most important issues are neither one of those if you spread them out. The economy and jobs, separating it from cost of living inflation, will edge out both immigration and abortion. And that's a major problem for Harris because voters trust Trump on both of those issues more. The New York Times poll has Trump trusted more on economic issues by about 11 points or something like that. Harris, yes, is got a larger, slightly advantage, just slightly, I think it's 13 on abortion. The problem for her is that abortion is a niche all the way down at like 9%. This is one of the schools of thought Democrats have been running for a while, which is that we're being underpolled on abortion. More people will care about abortion as their number one issue than the polls suggest. And because we have such a big advantage there, we're going to overtake his advantage with everything else. If there were other issues on the top of the list where she also had an edge, there would be a stronger argument to make, like Trump had when it came to the economy. And Biden narrowed that edge. Biden and Trump were dueling, right? Between who do you trust more on these 2-3 most important issues? Abortion's not even in the top 3. Immigration bumped it out last month. Even if it was the third most important issue behind inflation, cost of living, economy, and jobs, she would need to be winning it by a much bigger margin in order to overtake Trump's advantage on the other two. And then not to mention, let's say it was number 3. That would mean immigration was number 4 then. And Trump's lead on immigration is massive.
When you have a lot of things personally affecting you due to an administration, you are at a disadvantage.
Okay. Then she's got all this stuff too, just like we're supposed to turn a blind eye to all this stuff that's piling up against her. And it's stuff that like winning campaigns don't have to deal with. By the way, Iyad just texted me. The Washington Post isn't endorsing. The LA Times didn't endorse. They're not endorsing because she's a loser. I told you guys this. Media turns on Democratic candidates when they're losing. When they know they're going to lose, when it becomes pretty obvious they're going to lose, they'll turn on your ass. This is happening now. Wait until the Sunday shows this weekend, folks. You're going to start hearing things like, save yourself.
Yep.
Democratic strategists are going to start pulling their candidates into the office, into the room, the back office, away from where all the people with the signs are and the buttons and shit. And they're going to say, listen, it's time. It's time to start distancing yourself from Kamala Harris. Tammy Baldwin is already doing that. Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, already doing that. Alyssa Slotkin in Michigan, don't come here. Not with me. Why? Tammy Baldwin's running ads claiming she supported Trump's border wall. Yeah, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. The LA Times is one thing, and people want to like run out and, leave and whatnot. And by the way, the Harris Plus Ones and the Remington Research and Scott Rasmussen, RMG and Scott Rasmussen, their final polls are right now in the running for the People's Pundit's biggest cop-out bullshitter poll award. All right? Because that is the safest cowardly result you could publish. I will agree with Nate the Slimer on one thing. When you see pollsters do this, they're dishonest. It means they're dishonest. It is. It's not, they're not giving you what they think is their best result or what they even think is going to happen. They're giving you the safest result that they think they can explain away the most.
And get more money for doing it.
And then later like, look, I didn't totally throw you under the bus, but I did have you win. I did. Or they can go to Trump and say, like, I didn't totally throw you under the bus with that national. I had you winning in the States. It is risky to have Trump leading in the popular vote in your final poll. It is, because you just heard it. A Republican has not won the popular vote since 2004. And before that, you got to go back to his father in 88, 30 years. All right. We're going to take a break, and I got something for you while we do take the break. The Trump campaign has showcased this man, a Holocaust survivor, denouncing Kamala Harris for calling Trump Hitler. We'll be back after this message. I think regardless of whether the man is doing it for a campaign or not, or doing it on his own, he deserves to be heard. And if you're going to run around calling somebody Hitler, you better defer to what these people think about that. Let's listen. We'll be back. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Don't go anywhere.
Be right back.
My name is Jerry Wartsky. I'm 94 years old and survivor of Auschwitz and the Dead Marches. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland when I was 9 years old. He murdered my parents and most of our family. I know more about Hitler than Kamala will ever know in 1,000 lifetimes. For her to accuse President Trump of being like Hitler is the worst thing I've ever heard in my 75 years living in the United States.
Oh my
I know
God.
President Trump,
This is
and he would never say this. And Kamala Harris knows this. She owes my parents and everybody else who was murdered by Hitler an apology for repeating this lie.
Why should the Jewish people support President Trump?
Because he's a mensch. I believe that President Trump is definitely going to be good for Israel, because in everything that he's done up to now was in favor. He never double-crossed anyone, and he never showed any weakness. Watching President Trump pray for the hostages at the Ohel and spend time with him so meaningful. He has always stood with the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
She's cooked, yeah. Cooked. Oh my God, that was way worse than I was expecting it to be. Wow. We'll be back in 30. That may be the most powerful denunciation I've ever heard. That was way worse politically as far as damaging. Yo, I'm thinking of two women right now. One who's in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and the other one who's in Lehigh, Pennsylvania, that we spoke to last night, that were still on the fence. They were moving towards Trump. They did not like this Hitler thing at all. And they're going to see that somewhere. You know they are.
That poor man
I-
must have suffered.
what are they going to do? They're going to be like Fat George Conway and attack the Auschwitz survivor the way that he attacked the sister of the servicewoman he was trying to exploit in the Atlantic. Did you see that? He attacked the sister. That's a good question. I'll ask the campaign whether or not they're airing this on television. But I mean, it's going to make its way around. It's going to make its way around. I mean, just absolutely unbelievable. Little nuggets from the CNN poll. Harris is only ahead with voters 18 to 34, 51-41. That's it. They're tied among 35 to 49. Trump leads 51 to 42. And then they have seniors 50-48 Harris. He's going to win. How do I know? Why am I saying that? Because there is a real problem with the senior vote in polling. They are not polling significant enough numbers to be able to do what Edison will do, which they will show you this, and I guarantee you will see what I'm talking about. I always tell you, be careful with the exit polls. We'll look at the exit polls 5 days later. All right, because they'll be adjusted 15 times until they get it what they think is right. And I guarantee you that you will see 65 to 74 be dramatically different than 75 plus. In polling, when you don't have the budget, when you don't have the sample size, your 65 to 74 will be lopsided, and your 75 plus will be underrepresented. This is why when we poll, we break down senior and super senior for you. So you can see how much more Trumpy the 75 plus is versus the 65 to 74, which will be slightly Democratic, and the 75 plus will be overwhelmingly Republican. In 2020, we saw this. I wonder does somebody have the link to the New York Times crosstabs? I saw the story and it was the paywall. If you got the crosstabs for the New York Times poll, please throw it in the chat on Locals or, anywhere, but, oh my God, this is going to turn so bad on her. This is going to,
This is gonna hurt.
I
It's
just,
gonna hurt more than
this-
Battleground.
God, Laura. She's bent over like cracking herself up. Oh my God. Here's the latest early vote numbers in Arizona. They're enough to make Democrats crawl under the rock. Are you ready? Propensity to vote is what I'm really looking at here. Republicans are ahead. It's an R+7 mail-in electorate right now if you were to break it down. All right. However, by the way, that's a complete reverse from 2020. Republicans only won the early vote by 3 points in 2016. That's it in Arizona. That's it. Or I would say they won the turnout differential. Trump carried independents by a few points. It was basically tied. Independents in Arizona are more liberal than they are nationally. Because Republicans just do a better job getting people that are like leaning their way to vote, to register to vote. And why? Because they tend to be older too in some areas, Scottsdale and around there. But as far as the no propensity vote that has so far cast an early ballot, Republican. Actually, let me start with the Democrats first. 26,660. Republican. 38,682. There are literally 12,022 more ballots that are Republican ballots from no propensity voters. 1 out of 4 low propensity voters. Democrat, 31,281. Republican, 43,963. This is particularly damning for Democrats because Trump is winning low propensity voters, and I did not vote in 2020. And even the New York Times poll, you can see that he's up more among people who did not vote in 2020. That was the reverse. Biden was leading among people who did not vote in 2016. 2 out of 4 low propensity voters. Democrats, 60,430. Republicans, 74,309. Almost 14,000 votes. 3 out of 4 low propensity vote, 243,457 for Democrats, 273,991 for Republicans. This is bad news for Democrats. I mean, it's not bad news. I'm going to just tell you guys this. I'm going to make this very bold statement. They would call the election in Arizona the minute these votes were tabulated. Not even. I mean, we would have exit polls to know, and they're going to overstate the Democratic margin. Then the decision desks will, and I'm not mocking DDHQ, every news outlet has a decision desk. They're going to recalibrate their margins from their exit polls based on what they see actual from the early vote. They will then apply that, and then they will, obviously, we're going to get election day vote after the early vote is tabulated. Biden was up, I think, 13 or 14 points, 12 points maybe. I got to look. He won the statewide early vote. That's why Fox News called that race. It didn't matter because they didn't think that Trump had the margin to overtake Biden. In the end, the call was right. However, it was still irresponsible, and they got lucky. This, well, there's just no way for Democrats to catch up. So when you hear people say we would actually know who's going to win the election first, this is why. Republicans are also leading in the early vote. That's number one. By the way, there are 31,884 ballots returned by independents who have a 1 frequency. And there are 32,272 ballots for independents who have zero, they're no propensity. What do you need?
I was just gonna say, like, you remember when Hillary Clinton was talking about Wiener and when his numbers were going down and all that fun jazz, and nobody
Right.
likes a sinking ship, and that's why she told his wife to divorce him and all that yada yada. This is happening to
That's
Trump.
right.
They're all divorced.
Yeah, they're all bouncing. You're right. This is the Wiener syndrome.
Mhm.
Yep. By the way, look at that margin with women. Same thing. He's only down 6 with women. The New York Times poll showed Trump surged with women here at the end. He's crushing her with men. And then he tightened the margin from his 2020 against Biden. Biden was ahead in the New York Times poll, their final 58-35. Okay. Kamala Harris has dropped 6 points. Trump has risen 5 points for a net swing of 11 points to Donald Trump among women. This poll doesn't even have it that big. He's 50-44. Actually, that's pretty close to what the New York Times actually has. And then he's winning men 51-45, but in the New York Times poll, he's winning them more. Trump is apparently losing more GOP. They have an R+ electorate. I actually wouldn't be surprised by this if it turned out that it was like R+1 or R+2, and then she wins independents by a hair like this. Oh, no, that's 65+. Wins indies by a hair. First of all, this is like pathetic. 47% for a final poll is pathetic. Lean your damn voters. I bet you they did lean him. Did they lean him here? No, they did not. So they're saying there's no drop off no matter what the ballot is. I don't believe that. There's always a difference in the ballot drop off. She's only winning voters who have more than 50K, 49-45. First of all, that's a pathetic sample. How big is this sample? I feel like this is not that big of a sample. Does anybody know how big the sample is?
I don't know their samples are small. Just
Yeah, their samples are small like the rest of them.
small-minded.
Small mind.
That's where
And
we're
you know
at.
it's probably too educated because their crossover vote is actually going to Harris by 2 points. I
But it's
guarantee you
still
that
chilling if
doesn't
that's
happen.
the case, though.
Yeah, I Laura, there's like I know no Biden voter who's vote. I mean, I know no Trump voter who's voting for Harris. We know and speak to Biden voters who are voting for Trump a lot. There's just no way she's winning the crossover vote. Look at the white college graduate. She's only winning it by 4. What happened to the... She's going to exceed 60%. White non-college. Trump is winning 62 to 34. What? And look, he's at 39% with college grads. Non-college grad, 53 to 43. She can't win with these numbers. She cannot win. I'm sorry. It's just not possible, folks. Go back and look at some of the numbers that Biden put up. And the fact of the matter is, she's simply... This is Rui's worst nightmare. Rui Teixeira, Liberal Patriot, Substack, who also was the co-author of The Emerging Democratic Majority. This is his ever-loving nightmare right here. It is. Trump's winning 11% of liberals. Harris is only winning 7% of conservatives. That's actually pretty in line with what we found. And the Republicans are ahead by 3 on the generic ballot. This is about to be a rout.
Not put your sample size on a poll.
They didn't put their sample size on it. That's what I'm saying. Where's the sample size?
Oh, there we go. No.
Yeah, Charlie, I actually agree with this. So if he's stomping her in Arizona, then he's winning Nevada and he's making New Mexico scary close. I think why would the Trump campaign be going to New Mexico? You'd think that, look, he wanted 2 states badly and has wanted them. Like, of course he wants to win every state. Donald Trump just loves people and he wants people to love him. He does. And it's just, it's total opposite of what you'd hear from the media, but that is who he is. He wants to win black voters because he loves black people and he wants them to like him. All right, same thing with Hispanics. He has a deep appreciation for these different groups of people and their cultures, and he doesn't like that the media portrays him in the way that they do because he wants them to like him because he likes them. You know, like that. I'm telling folks, the way the media portrays Donald Trump is really nothing like what he really is. Like, of course, there is the stuff that even I've told you I don't like personally. It's very minute, and much of it is derived from when he's punching back, right? Like some of that behavior, it's like he's the most attacked man I've ever seen. And that those outbursts and those like crass, comments, they come from a position of being, the counterpuncher. Yeah, right. So he does. He really is. Somebody wrote in the thing, Trump loves people. He really does. So 1,704 and they can't split up income. I don't even believe that. 1,704 and they cannot show a detail between 65 to 74 and 75 plus. I just don't believe it.
It's like registered voters from
Is that
probability-based panel?
a probability-based panel? Right. So they went to Tainted and they bought responses for $3 a piece. And then they decided that they were going to play with weights until they got what they want. Right. So and you and I both know those panels are way too educated. And if did they text anybody? So I'm leaving Charlie's comment up there because the thing is, those states, you mentioned 2 of them that he's, or you mentioned one of them that he's always really wanted. Minnesota's one of them. New Mexico's the other. And in 2020, he wanted to make a play for both. They eventually pulled out of Minnesota because he was just not doing well enough with college-educated whites. And it's also, as you guys know, if you watch this show, it really does come down to Scandinavian voters and how they're going to vote for that cycle. If you're not going to do it well enough with Norwegians, that like Wisconsin's in the bag and you're good, right? Then you're definitely not going to do well with Finnish and Swedish. And they tend to be much, much, much more liberal than Norwegians, right? So he wound up pulling out of Minnesota and he didn't really make a play for it. But New Mexico was the other one. And especially since he has consistently done better with Hispanics in the state of New Mexico than he has with Hispanics overall nationwide. All right. And that is very important because New Mexico, the Hispanic population is a more working class population than a lot of these other states that we talk about, and then also nationwide, right? Right now, they got him at 37% of the Hispanic vote. The sampling error, however, is 9.7%. That actually is where we have him before we lean them, and then he goes into the low 40s. They have him at 13% of the black vote. Folks, he pulls down 15% of the black vote. this is a landslide. It's going to be, because again, it does not seem that he is losing with the white vote. He won white voters by 13 points. He is now winning them in this CNN poll by 14. But I'm doing the apples to oranges I keep yelling at people for. In the polls, he was only winning the white vote by like 6 points. He won by more than double. Double that margin. Now, he's not going to double 13 points, but even if he wins it by 16, Laura, and then he gets 15% of the black vote and 40% of the Hispanic vote, you're damn right New Mexico is going to be close. It just doesn't make sense any other way. The math doesn't work. Minnesota is going to be very close. New Mexico is going to be a you-know-what hair, ladies and gentlemen. Scary close. A donkey's butt hair.
Thank you.
Gorgeous. Anything for you.
You better. Conducted by online telephone with a live interview. Online and over.
All right. They did not do text to online. That's why. That's why. Yeah. I dropped the L word. What's the L word, Laura? Love? Oh, and you know. Yeah, a lot John Schmidt. Think Bergen County, New Jersey. Okay. I mean, I'm just telling you. I just dropped it again. Yeah, I guess. Oh, landslide. That's the L word. Oh, yeah. No, and I'm telling you, that's it. I mean, that would be, if she doesn't win the popular vote by like 2 or 3 points, she doesn't have a prayer. I mean, that's really the reality. If he does win these kind of margins, he's going to win the popular vote. I mean, which is just nuts to me. It's nuts to me that we could be here. Because for all of the talk about how well she's going to do with college-educated white voters, folks, it's not happening unless the polls are wrong. Nevada, by the way, even with that in-person came in. I told you guys, I gave you an update earlier this morning on the Quantus just dropped their Virginia poll. It's Harris 49, Trump 41. Holy guacamole. Michael Tracy, who you know I cannot stand all that much, that New Hampshire is within the sampling error, and this is terrible for Kamala. New Hampshire was well outside the margin of error through most of 20. Biden won it by 7 points. It correlates with a 4-point shift for Trump with similar demographics in other states, and it's a recipe for a Dem disaster. That's the bottom line. Let's say this 4-point shift happens. Harris holds on to the popular vote by 0.5 point, and the Harris plus ones are generally right. She's cooked. They cannot take this kind of a swing, this kind of a comparable swing across every battleground state, because in New Hampshire, it'll be 4. And if it is 4 in New Hampshire, which is much more educated, if it's 4 in New Hampshire, it's going to be like 8 in Virginia. It's going to be like, I don't even know in Ohio what his max could be. He could win it by like 12 points. Something like that. It would still be 4 because there's a seal. Well, not if he gets that many black votes. Republicans are now up 24,000 votes statewide with Clark County's mail-in ballots. I gotta bear with me. I gotta say, look, everyone's like, John Ralston's a fair player. John Ralston's a Democrat. John Ralston has figured out for years a way to spin the early vote and talk about firewalls in a way that he can justify when Democrats eke it out after they stuff another 40,000 ballots into Clark County. His firewall was hit, and Cortez Masto barely won, 0.2. At this point, we have to assume that Harris wins independents by 10 points or more in order to hold a margin a Democrat normally wins Nevada by. By the way, the country moves 2.5 points to the left from 16 to 20, and Nevada barely budges. 1 point. Tells you that Nevada will be more Republican than the national vote will be. That's the way it's been now and has been trending for years. You know, Liberty Vitter, you remember 2 months ago from Decision Desk, she was like, he's positioned to be the first Republican to win this state since Bush won it. She's been saying that for months, to be fair to her. And I am like, I don't know, it's fool's gold. I don't know. But the polling we did a couple of weeks ago suggested he was up. Love Publix. Love Publix.
Virginia polls 49, 48.
That's what I thought. 49 Harris, 48 Trump. What did I say?
I don't know. They said you misspoke.
Oh, did I? It's Harris 49, Trump 48, right? I think. Yeah, that's actually the problem with Virginia is not immigration only, like some other states. Hasn't been long-term illegal immigration. It's government workers that rely on the federal government to live. All right, here I got Ralston's take. I want to know what Ralston has to say about Nevada. It is Freewheeling Friday after all. And then I will tell you the way I think this map is as it stands right now. Okay. Here's the Daily Independent. What do we got here? The Early Voting Blog 2024. All right. This blog contains lots of numbers. Please email me if you find errors or have criticisms. I told him about an error yesterday. As I know it too, so did the Decision Desk. What's his name at the Decision Desk? John?
Mm-hmm.
We both saw it. Both of us contacted him and told him, you're wrong. Yeah, John. That's the one who does the early vote at Decision Desk. His name is John, isn't it? I think so.
I got it.
I know his last name. I just don't want to blow him. I don't know how public he is. But yeah, I mean the bottom line is he was wrong about his numbers yesterday, and he made it sound like it was like a huge cut into the Republican lead, and it was not. It was only 2,000 votes. Both him and I, John and I, both were like, dude, you need to take that tweet down. That's incorrect. And he just ignored us both. We're like, bro, you're wrong, bro. You're wrong. Anyway, good morning.
You can't help the stupid.
You can't. You really can't. Good morning, blog mates. I have to do an NPR hit in a few minutes. Last night was MSNBC. This morning's NPR. So please tell me more about what a fair and impartial person John Ralston is. He's a freaking liberal. So sick of hearing this. And we all have our views. Let's just out with it and stop pretending like we're robots who don't. I will just give you the headlines and the analysis context. Modeling comes later. What modeling? You make an assumption that both are winning the same amount of each other's crossover vote, and then you hypothetically, based on the amount, decide what kind of a margin the Democrat needs among indies to win. Like, that's not a model. It's by definition a wishful thinking exercise. A model would not be trying to calculate how one party can win over the other. GOP have a 24K ballot lead statewide. That is up from 18K 2 days ago, or 5%. And it's having a trickling down effect on down ballot races. He doesn't know how these people are voting. Okay? Let me ask you something. Is it more likely that a Republican in Elk County is voting for Harris, or is it more likely that a Democrat Hispanic man in Vegas is voting for Trump? Whether this is all about a front-loaded GOP vote and the Dems will begin to change the mix is a question we can't answer yet. He keeps saying this isn't a trend yet. It's not a trend. When's it going to be a trend, John? It's all over the country. When's it going to be a trend? November 6th, it'll be a trend. Yep. Clark is only 67% of the vote, while it has 73% of the registration, which you guys know if you've been watching the show for a while. Clark County casts about 70% of the vote. It does have almost 3/4 of the registration statewide. But in 2020, it was 69% of the total vote. I will show you later what the models show with various turnout scenarios. Here are the numbers, okay? And as you can see, Republicans have cast a total of 192,333 statewide votes. Democrats have cast 168,607. This is what John has yet to acknowledge and tell his readers. Barnes and I did a whole show on it a couple of weeks ago. You can no longer build these hypothetical firewalls if you start to lose your registration edge. And that is the problem that Democrats have been experiencing in multiple states. Florida is a great example of what happens when that process is mature and goes through maturation. All right. You cannot expect Democrats to bank 500,000 votes here and 600,000 vote lead in that state if they no longer have these huge registration edges. In Florida, they had lost from 800,000 plus when Obama won re-election to 500,000 by the time by the time Hillary Clinton was defeated by Donald Trump. They only had about 300 and something thousand. All right. By the time we get to 2020, there was the month before the election, the last update with the Secretaries of State's office, Republicans put up their first ever registration advantage since partisan tracking began in 1972. All right, in the state. There was no way we could talk about firewalls anymore with Democrats if that's the case. All right, in Nevada. In Pennsylvania, by the way, is another one. North Carolina is another one. In Nevada, it's another one. In Arizona, it was actually favorable to Democrats. The voting registration trend was favorable to Democrats going into Biden's election in 2020. However, almost immediately, that trend began to arrest and reverse. And Republicans made up ground and have now exceeded, even in Maricopa alone, exceeded where they were when Trump won 16. By about 3 points. All right. So no longer do Democrats have 80,000 advantage like they once had in Clark County, 50,000. Statewide, their advantage is just a tad larger than their overall registration edge in Clark County. Statewide, their registration edge is just a tad higher than the firewall they need in Clark County. It becomes exceedingly difficult to build things like a 20,000 vote net vote firewall in Clark County when your registration edge is under 30,000. Look at Washoe County where Reno is. Republicans have put up about 3,000 plus more votes than Democrats have. In Clark County, Democrats are up about a little less than 5,000. That is a quarter of where they were with Joe Biden on the fourth day of early voting. And they held and maintained that lead. Up and down, here and there, bobbed a little bit up and down, but for the most part, they maintained their so-called firewall of 20,000 votes the entire time of early voting. In 22, they kicked it up a little bit late, but they, again, put their best foot forward within 4 days. If there was all of a sudden this huge surge of Democratic voting, it still would not have the advantage or would not have the power that a 20K vote firewall once had, because they no longer have that kind of registration power, that kind of advantage power. All right. It's like going to the pool to drink more water, folks, but the pool is exceedingly smaller every year. You're not going to be able to quench your thirst the way you have in previous times. You drank from the pool too much. I need that too, for sure. It's 1:48. I can't wait to crush mine. All right. And the rural vote is an absolute monstrous deluge for Republicans. 38,802 to 13,764. Remember, typically the crossover vote favoring Republicans is more in rural areas, is higher. We're not sure that could be the case this year. Nobody knows. Maybe the Democrats are voting just like they do in the suburbs, 96-4, 97-3, whatever it may be. I actually tend to think that you're looking at crossover votes in urban areas a lot higher this year. And I think people are missing it because they're not talking to anybody besides like the educated urban voter. You know what I mean? So that's my theory of the case. We'll see. So overall statewide turnouts are 40.1, Democrats 35.2, and then other or non-affiliated 24.7. The D margin is negative 23,700. And notice he says D margin. Why is it a Democrat margin? It should just be the margin. And it should be either R plus 23,726 or D plus whatever. You see the inherent bias built into his thinking? It even goes on his spreadsheet.
You can't help it.
All right. So, no Secretary of State in-person vote numbers tonight, I'm told. That's true. It didn't come until today, which was a massive edge for Republicans. That's the update. Okay, so he just dropped the thing here. Right, so he didn't bring up that. Actually, no. These numbers include that in-person total. 10 a.m. his time? Yeah, I got him first thing in the morning. Anyway, so there you have it. All right. Washoe, it looks like Washoe County looks like Trump by like 1 to 3. That's if he loses independence, and we'll see. And he said earlier, I guess this was last night, that the early returns are not good for Democrat Representative Susie Lee and Stephen Hornsworth. But both were considered near locks because of weak opponents and national GOP not investing. But both could be in a tighter race than everyone thought, maybe. All right, so he is obviously concluding. Here we go. So he's obviously concluding that Democrats are going to win indies. It actually used to be. It's possible that this year you will see indies go for Democrats, even though typically Nevada indies go Republican. And that's because it is entirely possible that Republicans are doing a better job converting their independent vote to partisans. All right. We saw this in Florida. All right. New registrations definitely fueled the lion's share of Republican gains with registration advantages. But for a while, they were in fact converting their indie votes over to Republicans. That was a contributing factor. And that's why you would see Gillum and Biden winning independence after Trump won independence. All right. But Trump won independence in an electorate where the Democrats still had an advantage. You understand what happens? They are cannibalizing their independent vote, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you turn them out. But it will mislead you when you think, oh, now Democrats are winning indies. They're not the same indies they were years ago. All right. So it's totally different.
Not all indies are alike.
Not all indies are the same. Right. We got the Rogan podcast going on today. I know that they're recording it. We'll see what happens here. Let me see if there's any other notable news. Yeah, somebody had sent me Alex Jones thing. I absolutely know. I absolutely know that they're gonna pump unrest. I know they will. Oh, this is cool. I just said they're going on Echelon. They're going on talking about Rogan. Patrick Ruffini over at Echelon Insights apparently just pulled stuff like this. This is cool. Rogan listeners, people who listen to Joe Rogan, the margin, Trump plus 35. People who follow Elon Musk, Trump plus 51. Barstool, David Portnoy, Trump plus 18. The Von Shane Gillis followers, Trump plus 15. UFC MMA fans, Trump plus 10. I actually think it's more than that. I do. This is Virginia is very, very close. There's no doubt. It is very, very close. Full crosstabs and report at 2 o'clock. Sponsored by Trending Politics News. All right, that's cool. It's cool. Man. Oh, questions. You're right. I'm just reading the thing, the Washington Post drama. All right, let's go through. YouTube, is Kamala losing to the point where she's on her back right now? Oh my God. You did that. You put that in there. She is definitely on her heels. She's not yet on her knees. We'll see if that comes next week. Look, I really do feel that the polls are catching what we saw and they're just catching it now, they may be a little late. I just have to say, in 2020, they were just way off. In 16, they were weeks behind us. Weeks. We saw the race was Trump's by like our national poll always gave Trump a better chance because we had a consistent panel, right? With 25 to 33% repeats. But the state polls Hillary was winning at least marginally in some of the states that he won. Michigan. She was never ahead in North Carolina. What else? Wisconsin. She was up by 3, the most in our poll in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania was always in our polling very close. I'm not sure Hillary ever led in a Pennsylvania poll of ours. I think she did. I just don't know. Let's go look. Let's go check it out. That's a good question. But the point is, like, she was I think that the polls could just be lagging us again. She never led in Florida. I just saw that. Florida was Trump +2, Trump +3, Trump +2, rounded. 1.6 was our final Florida poll. He won by 1.4, something like that. Iowa, Trump +6, final. That moved to him too. It was only a couple of points for a while. All right, she led in Michigan. Oh, she did. Clinton +5. Then by October 24th, her lead began to collapse, but her +5 was 42 to 37. And then Johnson had 8 and Stein had 3. Johnson's margin begins to collapse. Trump goes up to 45. She goes up to 47. And then ultimately she stops at 47, just stops. And then Trump ekes past her in 48, excuse me. And it literally was Trump 0.6. New Hampshire, she led in New Hampshire. The last poll, this is one that we did get wrong. It technically was Trump +1 if you round 0.7, but that race was decided by like 500 votes. So give me a break. Ohio, she never led in Ohio. Never. Not in any of our Ohio polls. Never led in North Carolina. It was always Trump between 2 to 5. And our last poll was Trump +3.7. Guess what he won by? That is, I should have just retired after this one, man. I should have. Like, this will never happen again, how close we came. Look at Pennsylvania. Look at Pennsylvania. It's literally to the tens of percentage points. That's insane. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Virginia, Wisconsin, her biggest lead was +4. That's not true. So I was wrong about that. And then Wisconsin ended Trump +1. He won. Virginia was Clinton by 4, 6, 3, 2, 1. I actually thought it was 2. It wasn't. It was 1. So it came in our polling. It closed very close as well, like Quantus is saying. But then ultimately, she did hold on to it and by a pretty decent margin. It's just, so she's not on her back yet, but man, she is on her heels, and everyone is at the point where they're openly acknowledging that they're losing this race. All of us realize how important the Senate is. Why is Donald Trump not going to Minnesota and working extra hard with Royce White to get Royce White elected? That's a good question. I know he is going to Minnesota. Royce will appear with him there. That's a good question. It's just that he's got to do what he's got to do. Rich, what's the extent of cannibalization of election day vote from the early vote? So there's no doubt that the election day vote probably, we all should expect if Republicans are voting like this, that it depends what ultimate turnout projections are going to be. We have it right now a little over 62%. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 153 million votes. The majority of votes still will be cast on election day, but it is entirely expected if Republicans' margin on election day is not as big as it was in 2020, but it will still be big because Republicans are voting more early, and that's fine. But I just read you Arizona. It's like that in Pennsylvania as well, where Republicans are putting up more first-time and low-prop voters. Same thing in North Carolina. Same thing in Nevada. So, the question is how much Democrats are cannibalizing. Do they have this vote on the bench and they'll still get out? This has been the problem in states like North Carolina and even in Florida, which is just gone. In all of them. really Democrats are getting their reliable voters to vote at a higher rate, and that sounds great and everything, but it's not, because this tells you that there still are many more Republican votes in the there are more, let me put it this way, and this is why it's so dire for Democrats. Republicans are banking more votes, yet they still have more room to grow than Democrats do. Likely, because it's very difficult to get your low propensity voters out later. You want to bank your low propensity vote early and get out of the way. So then you can have your reliable voters go to the polls. And if God forbid something happens like how they screwed Kerry Lake in 2022, then you don't have to worry about huge lines where people can't wait on them, because they're not going to be as large. They'll still be large, you'll see, but it's not going to be like congested, where the low prop voter is going to get out of line, right? And they're going to leave. They're not diehard voters like you and I and Laura and everyone else, diehard voters. They're not going to do that. All right.
It's going to encourage more voting.
Yeah, right. It actually will encourage more, right? Because you got those low props already in the bank, and they're like, "Oh, I'm done. That's it." No, low props are in the bank, and then the high props are going to, it's easy to vote. Simple, but they're going to vote anyway. But the question is whether or not you're hindering your low prop voter. And you don't want to do that. You want to make it as simple as possible for them to vote. And Republicans are doing a better job doing that. Happy Freewheeling Friday. I have a question regarding party registration. I'd like Rich to answer. Are Republicans not gaining a large amount of registered voters to their party because Democrats crossing over in a primary to protest vote? I remember Rich ambushing Haley, rightfully so, for staying in the race and messing up party data. That's a good question, and we will see. Right now, however, there's very, very, very little of that, except where I may see it is in New Hampshire, and I just don't know yet. All right, that's why I'm a New Hampshire skeptic when it comes to winning New Hampshire for Republicans. I am a New Hampshire skeptic, and New Hampshire Republicans are crushing Democrats right now. However, they also may not really be Republicans. If there's one state where Harris is really winning early vote, that a good chunk of the Republican early vote, it's New Hampshire. All right. And it may not be. We'll see. But that's a state where the voter rolls absolutely were tainted. She didn't stay in. She still stayed in too long. But, it's not in the data either. It's just not there. Like, we're not seeing these huge numbers of Republicans saying they're voting for Harris. We're just not. Am I surprised how strong and organized the GOP get out the vote has been so far? You sounded skeptical in the past. That's true, Wong. And then when the election's over, we'll talk more about this.
That's because they stole his idea.
No. I don't care. The truth. I just don't want any. But we'll talk more about this after the election. I don't want to be Elon Musk. You know what I mean? I don't want to be in Elon Musk's position anytime soon. I'm not surprised because they listened. All right. They listened. And in some cases, dirty. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if, I don't want to say any. Yeah. We'll wait till after. Let me just tell you, there's going to be a line of people standing. Whoa! No, absolutely not. He's gonna pull it though. You just got it for me. There's gonna be a line of people waiting to take credit for if Trump wins, and they don't deserve it. And we'll be talking about that. But yeah. I've seen people on YouTube talking about an impending Trump landslide. Is there any polling supporting the theory? Well, the trend is moving in Trump's direction, and you can't always catch how big a win is in the middle of a trend like this. So in 2016, you caught a glimpse of it. You could see it coming, but they were behind. I do think that it is possible he wins here in like a big landslide. I said it before. And the polling actually does suggest it. I mean, like, look, I don't want to tell people this and then have anyone get complacent, but the fact of the matter is, do not be complacent. Do what you got to do. All right.
Like you're 20
Look at this trend. Look at this trend line. Now we got the CNN poll in here too. We looked at the trend earlier today. Now the CNN poll's in here. CNN poll was Harris plus last time. Now it's tied. CNN has a habit of understating Trump's vote by about 4 points in the past. All right. That's the average understatement. Overall, it's 2.7. That is a terrifying chart if you are the loser. Okay. You're looking at it and you know you're probably in the middle of like a decline that you cannot see the full extent of. Trump is now polling at 48.4%. He has never been this high as a vote share ever in 16 or in 20. In fact, what was his 45 something, I think is his cap in the averages? He has never been this high. So yeah, I mean, that is the evidence, to be honest. Yeah. Rumble, based on the insane numbers we're seeing in Nevada, I can see a clean sweep of the House. Yeah. And Brown even may be skirting through. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Look, there's polling and there's voting, and the polling looks better for Democrats than the voting does. All right. The actual vote looks way worse than the polling is suggesting it is for Democrats. It is very possible we could have a large polling miss in either direction, technically, but it is more likely if there is going to be a polling miss, it'll hurt Harris bad. I mean, this could be not that close. It's the way, look at the trend, guys. Look at the trend. Like if I go to Bush v. Kerry right now, you guys actually would not see that trend. Hold on. Okay, here we go. You're going to see bobbing up and down. Bush takes the lead. And then Kerry looks like he's on the up climb. Bush looks like he's coming down a little bit, but you could still see that Kerry's got a lead. That is not this trend. There's no convergence. Okay. You can see Kerry had a bump during the convention where he hit 48%, but Bush always had a higher plateau. All right. A higher ceiling, really. I mean, and the same is kind of true with Trump here, except, this was dare I say, an artificial inflation of Harris's support. She's now returning. See where Biden withdrew? If actually her numbers were here, where Biden's numbers were, you're actually going to see her trend line below Biden. For all how bad Biden was polling, she was polling worse. And it only was when they did what they did with the switcheroo based on one survey project they did over a weekend to push him out, to put in Nancy Pelosi's face. That was really the only polling that ever showed her doing marginally better. So her numbers would actually be below Biden's. So if we were to do that and we were to look at this trend, you would say, what happened here? What artificial happened here? And now you can see Trump actually surpassing. Look, Harris gave Trump a higher ceiling. I had been saying this when she first did this. Like, look, it's possible that she could raise the Democrats' floor because Joe Biden looked like he had a really low floor. She could raise the floor, but also raise Trump's ceiling. That's what happened. You could see it. I turned out to be right there. That speculation turned out to be right. Or it looks like it's right. Is there any amount of election fortification that can flip this for her if Trump is up by 1 in the popular vote? No, not really. I mean, I guess there is technically, but they would have to do it in isolated areas, which reminds me.
Yeah.
Please, if you live in the state of Pennsylvania, track your ballot. I unfortunately have to end the show with this news, but it's more important. All right. I'll go through some more, but I am starving. All right. But I have to bring this up. If you are in the state of Pennsylvania and you are voting early, please track your ballot. I unfortunately was contacted by someone, the law enforcement sources of this. They were called to investigate multiple locations where there are Harris Waltz campaign offices next to post offices. The original complaint was filed by multiple employees of the Postal Service, and they witnessed what appeared to be, I can't believe I'm saying this, just check your ballots. It appears from their view that they were being given lists, and if they saw absentee ballots from people on this list, they were to throw them in the trash. All right. There were ballots in the trash. All right. So the police didn't want to come on the record because they're afraid. And there's not a whole lot you can do about it. That's the truth of it. Now, with all that being said, they are underperforming in the vote by mail, regardless. And Republicans are overperforming regardless. So, I mean, that answers your question. There is a point where it's too big to rig. And Democrats cheat. I'm sorry. It's true. I'm not going to play this game everyone else in this business plays. Of course, Democrats cheat. If they didn't cheat, there wouldn't have been a massive indictment in Philadelphia by the Justice Department, which included former lawmakers, election judges, ward bosses. Come on. There was just another one in Atlantic City not long ago. It included again election judges, a former congressman. They cheat, and they're going to cheat because they don't like to lose. There's no way to stop it. You just have to exercise your due diligence, make sure your ballot is counted, and get to the polls. Vote. You can overcome it. You can absolutely overcome it. And anyone who wants to push that bull that they don't cheat is more than welcome to come on the show. Either Nate, whatever, John, whatever from Nevada, everyone is welcome to come on the show and defend the ludicrous idea that Democrats do not cheat in elections. They do. And by the way, Republicans sometimes cheat. They cheated in North Carolina, or not the party, but some consultants tried to cheat with absentee ballot fraud in North Carolina. A judge ordered an entirely new election. There's nothing wrong with calling them out too. But this idea that there's no evidence of voter fraud, there's evidence everywhere. You're a liar. My very first election, I watched them have black voters from Asbury Park and Ocean Grove, New Jersey, fill out their cousins and nephews and nieces and aunts' ballots, all for Lucy cigarettes, dude. All for a single Newport, which we called Lucy's back then. They are more than welcome to come on and defend that bull. Horse shit. Jonathan actually asked Rich if you've seen the video about the thing on X about the Harris campaign operation next to the post office in Bucks. Unfortunately, Jonathan, there's more than one, and it's not just in Bucks. There is also the one in, there's one in Erie County. There was another location they had to go in Lehigh, and one in Berks. Hamburg and Berks. Yeah, it was the Hamburg place in Berks. Well, I think I just probably gave away exactly which it is. Yeah, it was it was Hamburg in Berks County. They're doing it, which means that tells you, unless you're an idiot, but that tells you, yeah, number one, they're terrified. But also, number two, it tells you that it's systemic. It's more than one location. That guy just happened to see, I guess he just happened to like that video that guy took. I know what you're talking about. And that's the thing. The location in Hamburg, too, just like the one in Bucks, completely covered up. You can't see in the campaign office. When asked why the hell they were doing that, they were saying, well, it's hot in here. We're keeping the sunlight out. So every location was told to say the same thing. Whether you're in Bucks, whether you're in Berks, whether you're in Erie, you're all collectively boarding up the windows, and not boarding them up, right? They're putting they're taping like paper on the windows, like so you cannot see it. Unbelievable. My gut feelings about New Hampshire, I really do think that Maine is probably more likely to go before New Hampshire. And New Mexico, Minnesota, and VA, if this is the case nationally, they're going to be closer than people expect. Or at least some of them will. I know I talked to a Republican last night who thinks Trump has a very good chance to get closer to 350 because he thinks they could pluck off a lot of these states. And if not, certainly one or two. That's how they feel right now. Me, I'm always more cautious. You know that, guys. But I will say this. When something breaks in one direction, it breaks in one direction. Like in 2016, was all alone. All these people now supposedly predicted Trump's victory. I'm all alone. It's me, Robert Cahaley from Trafalgar, Mike, who used to poll for Rasmussen, saw that the race was close and said Trump had a chance. Like, I don't know what you people are talking about. But with the state polling, it's me and Robert. We're being abused, called all sorts of names, and we didn't think he was going to like maybe win PA and not the rest. Like, when it breaks in one direction. Biden, he didn't just win one, he won all three in the Rust Belt. All right. Not only Georgia fell, Georgia and Arizona fell, and North Carolina was 1.5 points and a little less. It was close. Like, that's not how this goes. If he sweeps the Rust Belt, Minnesota's going to be closer, if not gone. Minnesota was so close to going in 16, folks. And a lot of people don't seem to understand how, like, literally a handful of counties kept Minnesota from going. The Iron Range, you think it's gone more to the left with Harris as the nominee, or you think it's gone more to the right? You think Olmsted County is going to vote more for Harris than they did Biden or Clinton? Give me a break. Give me a break. Are we approaching the point where Trump will drag a lot of people? Yes, we are. Like, I think that's what was happening with McCormick and Roger against Slotkin. And I know for a fact, I'm telling you, I just saw the Democratic polling yesterday. She's down 3 points in Wisconsin, and Eric Hofda is up by 1. However, that's what her polling says, not mine. That's what her polling says in Wisconsin. And if I'm wrong, Harris campaign, release it. Let me see. Because I know it says that. You know it says that. You're down 3 in Wisconsin, and Hofda is up by 1. Except there is this fake America First ticket that they're running. Democrats have been funding in Wisconsin. They're very smart that they do this. And this guy is pulling just enough votes to cost Hofda the election. It's so close. Maybe he doesn't. Hofda wins anyway, but it's so close that you really cannot have someone doing that. This guy is running around pretending to be an America First candidate. There are conservatives who are obviously stupid enough to fall for it, and they are voting for him instead. Come here, Winston. You know I love you. I just don't want you to pull up my shirt. Come here, Winston. Come here, my Winston. All right, what else we got? Ryan, George Santos is claiming there's a Harris scandal about to drop. I am skeptical. I thought the Harris scandal was her husband slapping his ex so hard that she spun around and there's 24 witnesses. I could be wrong, and maybe there's something else, but I thought that is the only scandal I personally had heard about. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, these October surprise things are just like, whatever. Internal polls show Trump leading 0.5 to 2% in GOP turnout. I have seen this. Okay. Apparently, Republicans are running gangbuster in Minnesota. I'm telling you, if the bottom falls out from her the way it looks like it's about to fall out, the polls will be wrong. And he's going to take a state, at least, that nobody expected. It always happens. Almost always. And especially in this era. Oh, no, Arizona's wishful thinking for Democrats. No, it wasn't. Georgia, they won it every year. It's full scope. No, it wasn't. And Cruz will be just fine. Now, there is a warning of Cruz. Cruz tends, one time he was underpolled. The other time in 18, he was overpolled. With the exception of the Reuters poll, which blows, that was sponsored by Larry and his tiny crystal balls. All right. They had Beto up, and he was not up. But Emerson having a single point is very worrisome if you're Cruz, because Emerson was actually dead on accurate in 18. Dead on accurate. Cruz by 3. However, what's working for Cruz this time, again, which throws it in the mix, is Trump is on the ticket. And these people that vote for Trump in the Rio Grande, Zapata County, Star. All right, that's going this time, by the way. Hillary Clinton won that 60 plus to 30 plus. Then he damn near almost flipped it. He did flip Zapata. These are Hispanic voters who would likely never vote Republican without Trump on the ticket. Star's going this time. Watch. It's going. It's going.
Can't wait.
So is Miami-Dade.
Here we go.
So is Miami-Dade.
Oh.
Vindication. I remember in 2020. That poll's bullshit. Miami-Dade's not that close. He lost it by 30 points. Yeah, 4 years ago. Since then, there's been a whole lot of Venezuelans moving up in there. Whole lot of working class Colombians. And Cubans are now solidly in the Trump camp. What do I know? I've only polled Florida correctly my entire public career. What do I know? No Republican has done that well in Miami-Dade for president since George Bush in 2004. And it was a lot whiter back then. It was easier for Bush to get within 6 than it was for Trump. And yet Trump did it in a much, much less white electorate. And it's kind of funny. It's like in those areas, the less white the electorate, the better. Because you have all these rich, yuppie liberals that if they were a larger share of the electorate, the Democrat would do better. She's lucky if she keeps Hillsborough. I don't think she's keeping Hillsborough anyway. I'm just telling you. Pinellas, she's going to lose it. Let's go. Duval. Trump's going to eke it out in Duval. Seth's worried about dirty rolls everywhere. Seth's a good guy. But the fact of the matter is, again, you cannot do this to yourselves. That's what they want you to do. You have got to do your part and vote and track your ballot. I do my own exit polls. I think I didn't want to say anything yet, but I think we're going to be doing exit polls for Turning Point, and they're going to have their own exit polls, and we're going to conduct them. All right, we'll see. It's not 100% yet, but we will see. I love exit polling. It's fun. It's very intensive, and it's very expensive because of how labor intensive it is. But I love to exit poll. How are exit polls done in today's early election season? That's an excellent question. So exit polls is what I just told them. If you want exit polls, you better think about it now and do it now, because Edison, Votecast, they will all start next week. And you have to contact people and track the early vote. You have to stratify by the actual early votes. Like, you have to make sure that I really calibrate. You have to calibrate what you're finding with what the actual vote is. Because again, the early vote polls way to the left than what it actually is. All right. And you have to calibrate by, very important, location, geography, very, very important. Because if you're getting like a R+1 sample in Arizona right now, like Maris, by the way, had like D+3 in the early vote. Well, it's R+7. So you know you're wrong. You've got to do it. And then on election day, you have to recruit people. They have to be predetermined to be an exit poll participant. And then they vote in that questionnaire, or they conduct their interview at the time they voted. Whether or not they go to the mailbox and drop it in their mailbox, then they take your questionnaire and they are instructed to do that. Listen, will you participate in this exit poll? Okay, great. How do you plan on voting? Okay, great. Then we'll determine how and when you're interviewed, and we'll go from there. Which is great because, I mean, you're already creating what you're trying to make as a representative sample. It may end up that, obviously it will end up that you have to kind of like, tweak your demographics based on who is actually voting. All right. Very, very, it's a little bit more than that. It's the best answer I can give on the fly like that. Are you seeing any evidence of people sitting it out or voting down ballot and skipping the Trump-Harris race? Not really. Not en masse. There's always something, but not en masse. And thank you, Jay, for the final 47-47 CNN poll. Is it possible the election day vote projections will be off? There's a lot of early votes of people who normally vote on election day. I would think I already addressed that. Yeah. I just don't. I still think the majority of votes will be cast on election day. However, it's not going to be a huge majority. It will be like a 52% majority. I really do think that. What does cannibalizing the vote mean? It means that you're not getting any new vote. You're simply getting vote that you already expected to get, and you're just getting it early. That's a good question.
That's a great question.
Can you please explain what a firewall is and how these firewalls look in PA and Nevada? Okay. So the idea is that you bank as many votes as your firewall target is, meaning you project that you need X number of votes to be able to overcome what the party's going to get, your opponent's going to get later. So in the case of Nevada, they need a 20,000 vote firewall, or this is the argument, to be able to stop the rural deluge that comes in on election day. The margin is so big for Republicans, they will net 18,000 votes. So if you get 20K advantage banked already, then when the election day comes in, you know that they'll count that early vote later and it will put you over the top. All right. That's what it means.
Now, is that
And
20K new voters?
that's the thing. All right. So it really is not that simple. They want you to think it's that simple. And I'm not sure somebody like a John Ralston has the brain to comprehend this. Firewalls change as your registration edge changes. And you don't even know, you're assuming how those votes are being cast. Like maybe you're only losing 5% of your vote to Harris, and maybe she's only losing 5% of her vote to Trump. You don't know that for sure. You're modeling that out. All right. And the problem that they have in Nevada at the moment is that they no longer have this large registration edge to build a firewall that big, number one. And number two, in case their firewall is breached, to go and cure ballots, or because that's what they do in Nevada, or go and collect late ballots, which shouldn't really be accepted, but this is what happens. They don't have it anymore. They don't have the well to go back and tap again. Whatever they drank, and that's it. So the fact that they're not even anywhere near their 20K is a product, I think, of nobody liking Harris. I don't care what the polls say. Nobody is excited for this moment. And in part also is they no longer have, it's not as easy. If your registration edge isn't that big anymore, and really it's almost nothing in Nevada now. If your registration edge is not that big, then it isn't as easy as it once was to build that firewall. In PA, Democrats had cast over 1 million votes more than Republicans by election day. So they're talking about this 500,000 vote firewall. They need more than 500,000 votes. They've lost hundreds of thousands in registration advantages over these in the modern Trump era. They don't have that anymore. So even if you want to assume, however, that they do, and in PA, they need to hit at least 500K, they have to also assume that the mind changers in the polls we see all the time are somehow not going to show. And it's just going to be your normal crossover like it was. Joe Biden actually enjoyed more crossover vote than Trump did in 2020. So they're basing a firewall off of a margin they're not going to get. Okay. So, and by the way, I just posted some of the new numbers I had sent to like Sean Parnell and my buddy over in Bucks County. I'll read you what it is. So as of the problem they have is, again, normally they put their best foot forward and they requested a lot of ballots up front and have slowed up since in Pennsylvania. Republicans have ramped up requests and already are overperforming. So the edge Democrats have right now is not really expected to widen. It's expected to narrow. All right. So Democrats, their requests 56.4%, which is about almost 13,700 more ballots since October 24th. Republicans requested almost 620,000, which is about 31.1%. And that's over 19,000 since the 24th or yesterday. Indies were about 12.5%, which is normal for Pennsylvania. It's a very small share of the Indy vote. It's like 18%, 19. Change since 2022. Democrats are net down 808,365 requests. Republicans are down, but they're only down 145,105. Why is that? In part on the half of Republicans that they've already requested and returned more ballots than they did in 22. So the reason they're down is a positive. The reason Democrats are down is lack of enthusiasm. That's what it is. Returned numbers. Democrats, 59.4%, which is 36,000 more ballots from yesterday. Republicans almost returned 400,000 ballots, which is a little over 30%. That's a little over 30,000 votes from the day before. Indies, they're about 10.2, so they're actually trending down a little bit. However, Republicans since 22 are up 127,000 ballots plus. Democrats are down almost 100,000 ballots, about 94,000. The change from the end of 2020, Democrats are down nearly 1 million returns, 955,654, and Republicans are down too, but only 227,360. They're making their gap up. Democrats have a very long way to go. Okay. So, and again, it's trending in the wrong direction. Can you take mine out, please? Yeah. And so, right. So, like, they're saying they need at least this 500,000 vote firewall. That is bare minimum. And if I was a Democrat, that would not be enough for me to feel good. I would be very worried. They do not have the 1.1 almost roughly million vote advantage that they had going into 2020. All right. So you need to do a post-election Pollster roundtable show with Jason from Quantus, Mark from Rasmussen, any other pollster you can get. I can definitely get Cahaley and maybe Matt Towery and stuff. And I think that's a great idea. I think it's a really good idea. I don't know if she's still in the middle of collapsing, Gustavo. That's a really good question, and we're going to find that out this weekend. The only place we were really like able to really measure anything was like a collapse and a stabilize in Florida. So she collapsed as far as she could collapse, but it really wasn't that far. She was already down considerably. In Pennsylvania, I think we kind of did see that collapse. We'll find out this weekend whether or not there's more to it or not. Yes, they are trying to intimidate people. That's voter intimidation. Running ads and saying things like whether you vote is public record is voter intimidation. They're also trying to intimidate poll workers. In fact, John Ralston, who we were just talking about in Nevada, is doing the same thing. He's trying to intimidate poll watchers, making fun of them and also intimidate them. So should I sell my Barnes Trump win margin bet 65 to 104 and buy greater margins? I don't like giving. That's Robert's thing. Giving people advice on what bets to make. I don't like doing that. I really don't. That's his shtick. Lancaster County held a press conference about 2,500 voting applications were 60% fraudulent. They're currently investigating and validating with the people listed. Well, I worry that Democrats are never going to be good losers. I really am. I took a break from politics and I've been out of the loop. With weeks for the election, what would be your TLDR up to this point? I think I did all that, didn't I? I mean, honestly, right? And then David, how many seats will the R's put up in the House? Look, I'm certainly less bullish. I think that if we go to, let me see if I still kind of like agree with their thinking here. Hold on. Where is it? Come on. Yeah, there's the House. Yeah, they're leading by quite a bit now. All right. I guess that does. So the number of toss-up races has expanded. There's no doubt. I just wanted to plug in the national numbers. I mean, there are some generic ballots now that are Republican +4. The average is only 0.1, but again, you can see the trend. That puts about 40 seats on the table. It really does. But some of them are Republican, and I'm going to read that to you now. I mean, it's just that the latest polls are like really bad for Democrats. CNBC, Republican +4. Wall Street Journal, Republican +4. CNN, Republicans +3. The New York Times is a tie. I'm curious to see what we get, Laura, with the generic ballot. We have consistently seen Republicans lagging Trump. It'll be interesting to see what we see now. The problem is there are almost 40 seats. That means there are. Wow. I don't know, because you got Maine is going to be close, but with Trump on the ballot, they're probably going to take that one now. Maine too, I'm talking about. Minnesota too is also going to be in trouble for them. They're going to gain in New York, but will it be enough to offset the losses elsewhere? Problem is, out of the toss-ups, out of like roughly 40 toss-ups, only 16 are Republican, 24 are Democrat. So again, they're on defense everywhere you look. Still not prepared though to say Republicans can sweep that like that. I really am not. I just think there are some seriously weak Republicans, and I know Adam Gray is leading John Duarte. I get privy to those polls all the time. They're so weak. There's a poll going around saying, wouldn't you have rather have David Giglio? Like, would you vote for David Giglio instead? I kid you not, PPIC is doing it right now. You're going to see it soon if it's not out yet. He's like not able to keep staff. What's his name? Kenneth, whatever his name is. He's in trouble. David Valadeo will leak at it again. Garcia, he'll be fine. In this environment, he'll be fine. At least I think. We'll see. Virginia 7's always one where Republicans are like, but Republicans this time really do think that they have a chance in Virginia 7. And if that race is really this close, they do. Because Republicans in a state like Virginia should outpace Trump. They should. Even if it's just modestly, they really still should. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to boogie woogie. Keep your eyes on locals. Wait for the latest polling to come out, which it will. We're going to kick off with our national tonight. All right, then we're going to stop. We're going to wait till the afternoon Saturday. Do it again. Stop. Wait till the afternoon Sunday. Wrap it up and button it up for a nice little bow for you all Monday. I may even do it live on the show, but we're going to do what are the odds? We better at 2 p.m. and it should be done by 2 p.m. All right, but Pennsylvania, Michigan's another one. Keep your eyes to it. We're going to do another round Battleground poll. A Rust Belt Battleground poll. And we're going to do those two states because I really think those two states are going to tell us what the hell is going to happen here. All right. All right. With that in mind, that's it. That's a wrap. I'm going to have my salad. I've been dying for this house salad that I had in the fridge. I can't wait. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, share them far and wide. The links to the public polling project and everything else are in the description below. This show, of course, was sponsored by Freedom Gold and Jam and Bean. The links for them are down below. I will have to do another read. And that's it, I think, right? I'm not missing anything. I don't think so. But that's why you're supposed to follow them on locals, because I'll tell you there if I did. All right, folks, thanks as always for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe. None below. See you soon. Don't do anything I wouldn't do on the weekend. Go pumpkin picking if you haven't already. Serious business. Later, folks. Pumpkin picking. Pumpkin everything.